Boom. Welcome back. I was quickly shoveling some food into my face. I was quickly running around, putting the passport back where the passport goes. All of those fun things, because I gotta be on a plane in oh my god. I am so tired that I'm having to do sort of precautionary, careful packing. Um, the tie is packed. I'm also bringing my. These are. I need to find a way to get these guys to sponsor me. They're not sponsored. Um, Somebody says, "Did you nap?" We had like 20 minutes, so there was no sleep time in there. There was like not enough time to get a nap in. I got to find a way to get these people to sponsor me because they're great, earplugs, but they also are Bluetooth. So I love those for the plane. I'm going to be using those. Yeah, it's gonna be a long day. Mrs. Runkle is also not feeling well, so she's home from work, and we're still gonna go see a movie. We're still gonna have date night tonight, so um, it's gonna be an epic sort of adventure. Um, but right now, if you're wondering what's happening on the court stream is on fan mode. So there's the fans. We've got the fan. Did I redirect you guys wrong? I am sorry. Which earbuds? They are the Axel hearing protection earbuds. What movie are we seeing? We're gonna go see Furiosa. Um, that is the game plan. Um, Crap. My check-in timed out. I may have to get my passport again. The good news is we're still just on the fans, so if I have to go get my passport again, we'll be okay. Um, I don't know if it'll have saved that or what. We'll just have to see. It's loading real slowly. So some people are saying that Furiosa was great. Okay, awesome. I really liked the previous Mad Max. I don't know if Furiosa is going to live up to it, but we'll see. We'll see. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. I better book. What is it? Oh, hey, it canceled my seat because I was in the middle of upgrading my seat, so I better book that before somebody steals my chair. Um, but yeah, no, I guess I better book tickets too, just to make sure that I've got a seat at the airline. So what have we seen so far today? We saw the end of Brian Higgins's cross. We didn't see the children. They testified, but we didn't get to see it, and that's, as I said, just fine. We don't need to see that. Then we saw so then after that we saw the the ER doc. I was gonna say the medical examiner. He's not the medical examiner. He's the ER doc. But yeah, he was the next witness there. That is, so good stuff on that. But he was not super fascinating, I will say. Largely what he testified to was two things. He testified first, John O'Keefe is dead. We kind of knew that, but we needed actual evidence of it, so I guess it's good that came out. The second thing was that Karen Reed was treated for, sort of mental health concerns. She was treated because they thought she might be considering unaliving, was kind of the worry there. And amongst that, they took blood tests, they ran screens, and they found that she had a blood alcohol of 93. So, yeah, that's kind of there. So we're not certain, like it's not clear. How long is your flight from your place to Tennessee? Not too long, not too long. So I sent you guys to an unlisted stream. How did I send you to an unlisted stream? How could I don't even understand that. I don't even understand how that would happen. So, I don't know where that unlisted stream is. I don't know how to go rescue people from that. I apparently screwed that up something fierce. There's some sort of unlisted mystery stream somewhere that nobody knows where it is. If you're in that stream, like if you're there, tell them to come here. Tell them that they're in the wrong spot. So I see somebody posted a link. Where was the link? It was supposed to have auto-directed here. I don't know why. Where? Oh, that link got deleted. Because it was posted by, okay. How does... I'm just trying to pull this up here. M-A-Z. I'm just trying to get to there. All right, let's see if I can go rescue people. Let's see if I can rescue some humans. This is a bit of an adventure. I've never had to go on a rescue before. I don't know why. Okay, that video is just listed as not available. I don't know what the heck happened. Is what it is. YouTube doing YouTube things. I just don't know. Oh, we got some movement. Let me just pull up the screen here. We got some movement. The fan was doing fan things. There we go. So, yeah. Oh, we got the Wheel of Death. That's not cool. That's not awesome. So, yep. That's exciting. All right. All right. WestJet's page is loading really slowly. I want to get my check-in checked in. Want to get that locked down so that I can rest easy. 'Cause after this, I'm totally gonna need a nap. Let's see. First check bag is free. Excellent. Fantastic. My first check bag, by the way, is entirely snacks. Like 100% snacks for Emily and for, I guess, whoever else wants them, but mostly it's just for Emily. So, yeah. It's going to also be really awkward when I'm like, hey, I got a check bag. You guys have to inspect it because I have not really ammunition in it. And they're going to, whoops. Okay, we got some stream going on. Yeah, Kurt and I are friends. What's up? No, I'm gonna finish this one off because I gotta watch it in any event, right? I want to see this.
Thank you. Please be seated. Go back a second.
All right, so your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth called Dr. Gary Fowler to the stand.
Okay, so we got another doctor. I don't know who this doctor is, but yes, we'll see. Awesome. Apparently we hit 270K, which is awesome. It's not his fault. A lot of people have a lot of emotions over the whole thing, so.
Raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now here the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll give Kurt a call when I can.
Whenever
Which
you're
is
ready,
not now.
Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Gary Fowler, F as in Frank, A-L-L-E-R.
And sir, that microphone in front of you, you can move that
Okay.
any way you wish. So if you want to bring it up or down, just the wand itself.
I know that guy. I know the
What do you do
security
for work?
researcher.
I'm a pathologist.
I know him.
And where is it that you work?
I work at Good Samaritan Medical Center.
And how long have you been working as a pathologist at Good Samaritan?
Since November of 2015.
Now, if I could ask you just a few questions about sort of your
This guy also doesn't want to be testifying. You could tell he's a little nervous. Okay, fair enough.
your educational background, starting with your undergrad. Where did you go to school, and what, if anything, did you receive a degree in?
My undergraduate education, I went to Tufts University.
All right, so doctor, I'm going to ask you to put the microphone perhaps underneath your mouth and speak into
okay.
it, because in order to keep this room cool, we need to have these fans going. If they can't compete with you, we'll have to turn them off, and I think everybody would prefer to have them on. So please speak loudly.
How am I now? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So Tufts University, undergraduate. I have a degree in biology. That was.
And after you received your degree in biology from Tufts, where did you go from there?
I went to Tufts Medical School in Boston.
This guy is super shy. This guy is super shy. I feel for him. He doesn't want to be here. So yeah. Somebody's saying, can I gain it up? I will see if I can gain it up. I think it should already be pre-gained up. It is gained up to max. So that is as good as we're going to get, folks.
For 4 years. Yeah.
And after you graduated from medical school, where did you go from there?
I went to a residency in pathology, anatomic and clinical pathology at Tufts Medical Center. So I stayed within the Tufts system. Okay.
And how long was that residency?
That residency was, at the time, pathology residency was 5 years. It's now 4 years, I believe, but it's a 5-year program. I finished the residency with chief of resident in pathology in my 5th year.
And then following your residency, where did you go?
So this guy will probably tell us how
In
John died, not
1996,
just
I
that
finished
John died.
residency, and my first job was at Kearney Hospital, beginning the end of June of 1996.
And how long did you work at the Carnegie?
I'm still on medical staff at Kearney, so ever since I was transferred to help Good Samaritan Medical Center in 2015. My full-time job is at Good Samaritan now since 2015, but I still cover Kearney Hospital every now and then.
And are you board certified?
I am board certified in both anatomic and clinical pathology.
Now, you've used that term, and just if you could explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is as far as pathology and sort of the difference between anatomic pathology and clinical pathology.
Sure. Pathology, there's two subspecialties, I guess, in pathology. One is anatomic pathology, which is basically if you, as a patient, go to a hospital or have a biopsy, or a tissue biopsy, or an excision, or anything like that, it comes to the pathology department, and an anatomic pathologist is responsible for making the diagnosis for that patient. So we abbreviate that as an AP, anatomic pathologist. So in residency, you can also train to become a clinical pathologist. And clinical pathologist is a pathologist who basically deals with, to put it simply, if you have a blood test that gets sent to the lab, we are essentially responsible for the quality and the safety of that blood test to help ensure the lab tests that are done on the specimens are accurate.
So they're the guys at the hospital who handle the solo cups.
Now, with regard to your position at Good Samaritan, what is it that you do at Good Samaritan? What are your sort of duties and responsibilities in relation to that hospital?
I am the chief of pathologist at Good Samaritan Medical Center. I'm also the laboratory medical director. So my job at Good Samaritan is to ensure, quality of both the anatomic pathology side of things as well as the clinical pathology side of things.
Give a
Ultimately,
thumbs
my
up
job
if you
is to
can.
help ensure that any laboratory report coming from Good Samaritan is accurate.
Please like the
Now,
stream
the
if you
lab
can
at
while
Good
you're
Samaritan
here.
where the
It does
testing
help.
is done, is that accredited?
Yes, it is.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what that accreditation means, who it's by, and sort of what goes into that accreditation process?
We are accredited by the
We're accredited by the like that groan is just like
College of American Pathologists.
yeah.
We abbreviate that as CAP, if I mention that later, just so you know. And the accreditation process, the CAP has been in business for 75 years or so. They, according to their website, are the preeminent accrediting body for medical laboratories. So what that means is every 2 years we have an in-depth laboratory survey. That's every 2 years, and there are over maybe 3,000 elements or checklist requirements that the CAP will look at in our lab, which ranges from anywhere, for quality, mainly quality control, making sure that we have enough staff members.
I'm sorry, chat.
Just about anything.
The
that
experts
can
are going to be
affect,
uninteresting.
a
but
laboratory result. There is essentially a checklist requirement that we need to fulfill and pass. So that's every 2 years.
And is that accreditation, is that up to date as of now?
Yes, it is. We will be having another inspection. Our window opens in July, so it's coming up. We have a 3-month window where the CAP can come anytime unannounced. So.
And was that accreditation up to date prior to January 29th, 2022? Now, as far as the clinical portion of the lab, what are some of the things that get tested as far as what are some of the things that are tested for in the lab as far as blood work is concerned?
Many different things. As probably all of you know, when you go to a hospital, you have your blood tested, and the physician is looking for different tests such as like a sodium, a potassium, a chloride,
feel
some basic tests.
bad for this guy. He doesn't
if
want to
they
be
show
here.
Abnormality that could help them, help the clinician make a diagnosis on you. So the most common things would be like a glucose, sodium, potassium, chloride, stuff like that.
Now, is there's some sort of like standard algorithm for things that are tested, or does it sort of dependent on the patient's presentation?
I think it's depends on the patient's presentation. There's no standard ordering test that one can order. So it depends mainly on what the doctor is thinking and his differential diagnosis. He will order, a variety of different tests. Some tests are pretty standard. When you go to a hospital, they might order, the test that I just talked about, a CBC. They want to look at your complete blood count.
Just a little louder, please.
Okay, sure. Things like that. Want to look at your hemoglobin, hematocrit, maybe sodium, potassium. Those are some of the really common tests that would get ordered in a hospital.
Now, as far as drugs of abuse, including alcohol, is that something that's dependent upon the presentation of a patient to your facility?
I think an alcohol test or drug of abuse test is not a routine type of order or test. It all depends on if the clinician or the primary care physician is suspecting could be, drugs of abuse or alcohol on board, and they need to know, if so, to help treat the patient.
Now, would that also include sort of a patient that presents in regard to a mental health status or Section 12 drugs of abuse? Would that be somewhat standard in relation to testing or blood work that's done in relation to that kind of patient?
As far as Section 12, I do not know if there is a standing order for a routine ordering process for a patient that is admitted to Good Samaritan under Section 12. So I'm not sure.
Would that be abnormal, though, as far as doing a blood draw and testing for alcohol and someone presenting on Section 12?
I don't think so, no.
Now, with regard to a blood draw in Good Samaritan Hospital with reference to testing for alcohol specifically, what, if any, sort of policies or protocols are in place in reference to that type of blood draw?
I think a test for blood alcohol is the phlebotomist pretty much has to run through the same.
Phlebotomist is basically a professional vampire. They're the people who take blood. So, yeah.
Protocol that he or she needs to follow for any type of blood test, except for the fact that we do not want to use an alcohol swab to clean the area before the blood draw. In theory, if you use an alcohol swab and you're testing for alcohol, then you can, in theory, contaminate the blood sample with some of the residual fluid of the.
I don't think that's much of a theory. Alcohol tests are very subject to all sorts of contamination. So, yeah.
Of the alcohol. Some people say if you let the alcohol swab dry for 30 seconds, it's not going to contaminate it, but we don't go by that process. We have it specifically in our policy never to use an alcohol swab when an alcohol test is ordered.
Now, in that vein, Doctor, with reference to Good Samaritan and the emergency department, what, if any, precautions have you or your facility taken in regard to those types of blood draws in testing for alcohol with regard to alcohol wipes being used?
My phlebotomy supervisor has removed essentially all, not 100%, but all of the alcohol swabs down in the emergency room. So a phlebotomist who perhaps could forget, which they shouldn't, because we have competency policies for them. So we have that in place where she's removed almost all of them so somebody can't mistakenly use a swab down in the emergency room.
Okay, so keep your voice up again, please, Doctor, especially at the end of your sentences. Thank you.
And so, Doctor, the removal of those alcohol wipes from the emergency department at Good Samaritan, does that predate January 29th, 2022?
It's been in place for a long time. Before that, there was a policy that they would use betadine for swabbing, but that policy has been in place for a long time, and before that day of 2022.
So basically, I suspect that they're saying that, or that they're anticipating that defense counsel is going to argue that the alcohol reading was a contaminated reading, and so that's why they've got all of this, stuff on using the betadine instead of alcohol. That's why they're going through all of this, right? So, yeah.
You've spoken a little bit about, as far as phlebotomists working within Good Samaritan. If you could just explain to the jury sort of what is a phlebotomist and what is it that they do?
A phlebotomist is is any person who is trained to draw your blood when you come to a hospital. So if you come in, we train people to draw the blood.
And as far as with regard to phlebotomists at Good Samaritan, you mentioned that there's some proficiency testing or some protocols that they have to adhere to. Can you explain that a little bit more to the jury as far as what's involved in those?
So with anybody who works in the laboratory, per CAP checklist requirements and the government's requirements, there has to be competency policies and assessments on anybody who works in our laboratory, including phlebotomists. So
You can't be a
any
screw
new
up.
phlebotomist, they get an initial training, and there's they'll get a training, and then they have to be assessed to make sure that they know what their job, what they need to do for their job, including knowledge of all policies. Then after that, after initial training, our competency policy states that we need to assess them again at 6 months. We do the same thing, make sure they know what they're doing. And then 6 months from that, so that's a year from when they started working for us, and then annually thereafter. So the CAP is, we have all these competency policies for everyone to make sure the lab technicians know what they're doing. We also have competency policies for pathologists as well. So it's all about making sure the final result is that comes from our lab is a good quality.
Oh, God.
May I
This,
approach the witness?
Yes.
this guy is painful.
I'm showing you 2 sets of documents. If you could just look at those and then look up on the thing.
Okay.
And just in general, do you recognize what those are?
Yes.
And what do you recognize those to be?
There are 2 of our policies that we have for Good Samaritan Medical Center, one for the phlebotomist, one for our laboratory technicians. The first one is a patient preparation for specimen collection policy, which defines our policy for drawing the blood for the phlebotomist. The second is an alcohol policy, which is one of, I don't know, thousands of policies that we have in the lab to describe how our policy for alcohol testing. Every laboratory test in our
Hearing about
hospital
policies
has a
is just
separate
super
policy.
exciting.
Well, everything from hematocrit to sodium to potassium chloride has its own policy, is that correct?
Correct.
And the policy you have before you, that's for alcohol test?
Correct.
And those 2 policies that you have before you, were those policies, what was in place on January 29th?
We haven't actually heard a result yet.
Correct. Yes.
May I approach again, Your
Okay.
Honor? I'll seek to introduce in a minute the next 2 exhibits.
Any objection? No objection. All right. So, Madam Court Reporter, I don't think we marked SS into evidence.
We can't
Did we-
speed this up because we're in real
Do we have that ready
time
to go into evidence?
or
I
thereabouts.
don't believe so.
All right. So these instead, Madam Court Reporter, will be the next 2 exhibits.
This guy is as exciting as an actuary.
And what is 107, Madam Court Reporter?
I believe 107 is in reference to excuse me. I believe 107 is in reference to the alcohol testing, and 108 would be in reference to the sample collection.
All right, thank you.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm just showing you a document as far as some medical records. Are you familiar with those records?
Yes.
Those records are in relation to a patient named Karen Reed that visited the Good Samaritan on January 29th, 2022. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, with reference to, may I approach again, Your Honor? Just a-
Yes.
Sure.
Bring your attention to a previously tapped portion of those records. Do you see a result for alcohol within those records?
Mr. Lally, you have to keep your voice up when you're here as well.
Let me say
She's like, everyone needs to be loud. Loud, please.
it again, sir. Doctor, with reference to those records and the page that I've opened up to, do you see a record in regard to a lab result for alcohol testing with regard to Ms. Reed?
Yes.
And what is it reported as, sir?
It is reported at 93 milligrams per deciliter.
And is that, as far as milligrams per deciliter, is that a relatively standard way of reporting an alcohol result?
Yes, it is in our hospital systems.
Could you explain to the jury sort of milligram per deciliter what that reading means as far as the metric that's used there?
Well, it means 93 milligrams of alcohol per deciliter of the blood.
Really, 93 milligrams per deciliter means 93 milligrams per deciliter? Fascinating.
And as far as, if you could explain to the jury sort of the testing process or the protocols that are in place at the Good Samaritan, so the blood is drawn by the phlebotomist, and then what happens from there as far as the testing is concerned?
Okay, so
Before you do that, doctor, so we might have to turn off the fans, which we don't want to do. I really need you to keep your voice up so that the court officer over there, so that folks down there can hear you.
okay, so at Good Samaritan, I can go through the process.
I don't think people are being
The
that.
doctor will order.
People are being pretty well
the
behaved, I
test.
think.
In the emergency room, we have 2 phlebotomists down in the emergency room. That test will print out, the order will print out down in the emergency room. And it will print out a label for the blood tube. It will print out on that label the color of the blood tube to be ordered, and will also print out what on the label what is to be tested in our lab. So that order will be seen by our phlebotomists in the emergency room. They will then locate the patient and perform the venipuncture or the blood draw. And use the correct tube. They'll go through their process of one of the most important processes in testing somebody's blood is accurate patient identification. So within our policy, we ask the patient to state his or her name, first and last name and date of birth. We have them say it out loud to make sure we have 2 forms of identification. Once that's confirmed, there's also a bracelet on the patient, so we'll match it up with a Good Samaritan ID number. So the first step is to make sure we have the correct patient. So then the phlebotomist has the order in front of her or him and uses the correct tube. Before drawing, they have to find the correct vein, a good vein for the patient, which is usually in the forearm antecubital fossa area. They will find that vein.
Mrs. Runkle, they always have a tough time finding good veins. Me, they never have a tough time, but Mrs. Runkle hates going to have blood tests because they're always like having to stab and stab and stab again.
They will cleanse the area with a non-alcohol swab, which in this case the order was for
All
alcohol.
right, so doctor, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you. I think part of it is that you're saying so much and your voice is fine, and then it drops, and it's fine, and then it
Okay.
drops. So Paul, can we turn the fans off, please? It's important that all the jurors hear everything you say, doctor.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so but speak into the
I'm
microphone.
going to bring it really close.
All right, this should be better with.
Hopefully you can turn it back on when I get better at this. So I'm sorry. It's hot. I'm hot too. So
The jurors now hate him because the fans are off.
one is we make sure that it's correct patient identification. We use the correct tube. We draw it. We don't use an alcohol swab. We use one that doesn't contain an alcohol in that. Then the phlebotomist will then put the labels
guy doesn't
on
wanna
the
be here.
tube or tubes in front of the patient. Then bring it back to his or her area. Make sure they sign their name they initial their name on the tube as well as the time. Then it will be put into a bag, and the emergency room, it goes through a chute and it goes directly to our laboratory for testing. Once we get it, it's called receiving the blood work. A technician, a lab tech in our lab, will scan. There's a barcode on the label. They'll scan it, and that will document the time that we received it. They will also enter.
He also needs to move his hand away from his face. He's doing that as sort of a nervous thing. But when you talk into your hand, like it's not helping. He needs to move his hand away.
Manually enter the name of the phlebotomist and the time of the blood draw. So we have.
He's very nervous.
records
He's
of
sort
what
of
we received and the time.
self-stimulating here.
Once that's done, it's entered into our system, and then the technician will decide what needs to go next. In this case of an alcohol test, we're using a green top tube, which has lithium heparin, has an anticoagulant in it. It's to prevent clotting. So we'll get that tube, and once it's entered, we will centrifuge it, and that is centrifuged for about 10 minutes or so, so that we can separate the layers of the blood. In the blood, when you first see blood, it's all red, and there's no separation of the elements. But within blood, there are red blood cells, there are white cells or inflammatory cells, and there's the liquid portion of the blood. So for alcohol testing, we there's an anticoagulant in it, and so we will centrifuge it to separate the different layers of the blood. The different layers, the red cells will go to the bottom, and the aqueous portion or the plasma portion will go to the top. And when we test for blood alcohol in our lab, we're testing the aqueous portion or the plasma portion of the blood. So that's why it's important for us to centrifuge it and separate the components. Once that is done, that takes about 10 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer. Then that tube will be brought over to our machine, which is a Roche Cobas machine, and it will be put onto the machine, and that machine will test for the alcohol or whatever else is ordered on the patient. I think I covered everything.
Now, with regard to, you used the term a couple times as far as a centrifuge, can you describe to the jury sort of what that is and how that instrument works?
Sure. So when
Centrifuge spins
the
stuff
tube that
to
we take is a
sort
blood
it out.
tube, and we want to test the aqueous plasma portion of the blood. And the only way to get that plasma portion, or the watery solution of the blood, is we put it in a centrifuge, which will spin the blood at a rapid rate. The aqueous plasma portion of the blood, and the only way to get that plasma portion, or the watery solution of the blood, is we put it in a centrifuge, which will spin the blood at a rapid rate, something like 3,300 RPMs or so, which is fast, and it will separate the blood into those three layers. Also, in the tubes that we use is a gel that comes in the tube, and it nicely separates the red blood cell component from the water or aqueous plasma component, and keeps those two portions of the blood separate to make it easier for us to test on our machine.
Now, as far as the blood testing is concerned, is there a difference between sort of what's known as whole blood versus serum and plasma?
There is a difference. Whole blood is basically the whole blood. When somebody has a test drawn, and if we test something on the entire blood without separating it, that would be whole blood. If we say we're testing on plasma or serum, we're actually separating the components of the blood.
Okay,
by the
I'm really
centrifuge
ready for
process.
this to get to the point.
Now, which of the two, as far as serum plasma versus the whole bloods, which would record as far as a higher percentage of alcohol in the testing?
I'm sorry, folks.
Alcohol,
I have not slept.
the
I
answer
am
would be,
struggling with this.
Plasma or serum would have a little bit higher blood alcohol content compared to whole blood.
As far as the separation that you're talking about, is there a specific area as far as the separation is concerned where alcohol tends to concentrate within?
Yes, alcohol tends to go into the more
Where
into
does
the
the blood hang
watery,
out?
the aqueous component of the blood. So when we like serum or plasma has a 98%, reportedly 98% water component. Whole blood, if you look at the whole blood overall, it has a lesser percentage. If you look in the literature, it can be 86% or.
Come on, man. Tell us about your butt dial.
But, so since alcohol tends to go to the watery components, if you measure alcohol like we do in hospitals,
Lolly,
on the
ask him a
serum or
question
plasma,
that's getting to the
value
point.
that we get will always be a little bit higher than total, than measuring on whole blood.
aware of, through your training and experience, sort of a conversion that can be done between sort of what's reported as a testing from the serum plasma to a whole blood count?
In the hospital, we're pretty much in the business of, reporting alcohol, in serum or plasma, and we're not in the business of the legal aspects of alcohol testing, because alcohol, what I understand is the alcohol legal limit in Massachusetts is 0.08 grams per deciliter. We don't make any conversions in a hospital. We're not in that business to do that. We just report on the serum percentage or the plasma level, and we don't make any attempts to do any official conversion to a whole blood level.
Wait, so is he saying it's not 0.08 but 0.93? Because if so, I can tell you that's not an accurate result, because if we're not talking about 0.08 or 0.093, but we're just talking about 0.93, then we're talking about like the blood alcohol of my vodka. So I think it's 0.093.
If we did, we'd have to validate, we'd have to do many studies, and we're just not in the business for that.
And I understand that's not how it's reported within your record or at your facility. What my question is, are you aware of a process by which you can sort of then mathematically convert from milligrams per deciliter to a gram?
I am aware of that. Recently, I had to read about it, but up until recently, I was not aware. I'm not in that. We're not in the business for whole blood. But there is a formula. I do know about it, and it's there is a if one wants to convert a whole a serum or a plasma level to a whole blood, there are formulas that basically you need to. It's a simple formula, but there's varying opinions on which formula can be used.
Oh,
Now,
please
as
go
far
into
as
the
this,
opinions as to which
specific
formula.
patient, the defendant, Ms. Reed, do you have any sense from the chart in front of you as far as sort of the timeline of when the blood was drawn to when it was tested and reported and things of that nature?
I think it was the order was 9:03 in the morning. 5 minutes later, the phlebotomist, it happened pretty fast. 5 minutes later, the phlebotomist got the labels printed. Then 5 minutes after that, they went in and drew it. It was very quickly. I don't have the numbers in front
tell
of me.
it's slow
But
about the label
ultimately,
printing.
It was received in our lab, I think.
MJ,
10
we have no
minutes
way to
after
speed
the
this
order,
up.
the blood,
We're at real
very
time.
quickly. And then the final result, when the alcohol level was reported in the computer system, was, I think, 50 minutes from the time of the order.
Thank you, sir. May I approach?
Yes.
What, if any, solo cups did you use?
And that lab results done pursuant to the testing and the policies and the protocols and everything in your lab was 93 milligrams per deciliter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you, doctor. I have no further questions.
Oh, thank God.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You testified.
Doctor, isn't it true that there's literally any place on the planet that you would rather be? I mean, I feel bad for this guy. This is not his specialization. This is not what he does for a living, right? He doesn't, I mean, he does the blood draws and so forth, but he certainly isn't the guy who comes into court to testify about the blood draws and so forth. And this is the thing they don't tell you about lawyering, right? Everybody thinks about like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to do the Higgins cross. What they don't think is I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to have to sit through days of pathologist testimony, and sometimes the job is not glamorous.
That, you know, hospitals are not in the legal business of calculating BACs. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
And you'd agree
Holy
that
crap,
there
he
are
remembers his
differences
test.
between screening tests that are conducted
Holy crap, this guy remembers his testimony. That's new and exciting. We haven't seen that all trial.
at hospitals and forensic tests that are done in labs, correct?
Correct.
And the purpose of testing in sort of a clinical setting at a hospital is to assist in the quick diagnosis and treatment of a patient. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And so you're...
I'm just going to say, I love that this guy does not have the brain worms. He's just like, yes, let me answer some questions. Fantastic. And I'm just going to say, like, this guy might be not exciting. Like, this guy might be less interesting than, you know, watching paint that has already dried. But he certainly seems honest.
Priorities may be different than those if you're in a forensic lab where the goal is to ensure accuracy and reliability at all costs, correct?
I don't agree. Not correct.
Well, hospitals use serum tests to screen for the presence of alcohol, correct?
Correct.
And you'd agree that serum testing does not measure alcohol directly, but it actually measures the presence of NADH.
Correct.
He's like, wow, you've done your
NADH is
homework.
a byproduct that's created when the body breaks down alcohol.
Correct.
And the reason hospitals use a serum test rather than a whole blood test is because it's quick and efficient and you can get test results within 20-ish minutes. Does that sound about right?
Correct.
And you'd agree that NADH, which is what serum essentially tests for, can also be elevated by factors other than alcohol in the blood.
I'm not aware of that.
Are you familiar?
Yep.
Are you familiar with any medical literature that has found that NADH is created when the body has elevated either lactate or LDH in the system?
Correct. There are some issues, in our policy. There are some factors that can lead to falsely elevated or falsely lowered serum alcohol. One is lactic acid or LDH. Another one is Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, which is a hematological problem, and other things that can interfere with not just any test or lipids, high levels of lipids or hemolysis or
Lipids are
high
fats.
levels of bilirubin. But our machines are very sophisticated now. If there are any elevations of, let's say, hemolysis or lipids or bilirubin, the Roche machines will detect that and flag it as a possible interference, or it won't even let us result a test. So with any test, there can be interferences, and I'm sure there can be interferences with the forensic way of testing as well.
All right, so there are other causes of high levels of LDH and therefore NADH also include things like trauma, muscle weakness and loss of muscle tissue, or abnormal tissue formation. Is that correct? Have you read studies about that?
I haven't read those studies, no.
would you agree that there may be other sort of medical stressors or things that can't necessarily be captured by the technology, but that could cause error in testing?
I don't understand that question.
Well, you testified that there can be certain errors in testing. That's something that we see throughout all different types of sort of scientific literature, which includes ethanol testing.
Yep.
And there are certain sort of factors that could cause a higher level of NADH that can't be.
What she's trying to say is, couldn't this test be thrown off if you're in a traumatic experience? I.e., you know, the traumatic experience that Karen Reed just literally went through, right? So, yeah.
Might not necessarily be picked up by the machines that you use at the hospital. Is that correct?
Or because she has MS.
I am not familiar. I mean, if there is, it's not not a common phenomenon. Our methodology for doing many tests are based on this NADH enzyme methodology, and we've never had issues with it. I read a lot. I haven't read about major faults of our methodology for testing. Most hospitals, when we look at when we actually have to do proficiency testing with any test that we do in a hospital. So 3 times a year we get sent unknown levels of alcohol and 5 samples to be accurate 3 times a year, and we're able to look at not only our results, make sure they're correct, but we're able to look at how what other hospitals are doing across the nation. So when I last looked, and it's
I kind of feel like that, yeah.
Over 10 years, maybe 20 years, is that
this poor guy.
Of the, I think, 5,000 hospitals that are testing for alcohol, it's over 80% of them are using our methodology, which is the alcohol dehydrogenase and NADH, and I can't imagine if why.
Court TV, stop trying to read the lawyer
if there were any
communications.
major issues with alcohol testing using that methodology. Why would it wouldn't be that high of a.
As you testified, the goal in a clinical setting, obviously, is to test for the presence of alcohol, but you're not in the business of trying to sort of calculate BAC, correct?
No, we don't.
So your goals are to make sure that you're screening for the presence of alcohol, but you're not quite as concerned with the precise amount that you might see in, for instance, a whole blood test in a forensic lab.
Well, we result in.
We're at 1.5
in the serum. We know the Massachusetts laws and laws across the nation are based on whole blood, but there are in the literature formulas that you can use if it were a medical legal case that one can use to convert our level to a blood alcohol. We don't do it in a hospital. We won't report a serum alcohol, and then we don't do the conversion. But because it's a very rare event that a level will end up in court. But there are forensic lab people that can provide that formula.
And when you get a test result from a serum test, that information does not establish when alcohol was consumed, correct?
Correct.
And so you're just looking at a specific point in time to say this is what the serum test reflects at 9:08 a.m. on January 29th.
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Mr. Wiley, any follow-up?
So one of the things is that she could have been drinking at, before they go out looking for John O'Keefe, which actually means that her blood alcohol could have been going up at the time of her getting taken to the hospital, right? It could have been going up in the sense of, she's still digesting booze. That's entirely possible. They're going to be saying, if you assume that she drank nothing else after, whatever, that clearly her alcohol must have been, hugely high. That doesn't seem like the most likely thing there.
Just briefly. As far as the interferences or anything that would lead to elevated levels from your review of Ms. Reed's chart, was there anything like that present there?
I didn't see anything, no.
And the interferences would be accounted for in the sense of the machine would sort of vet them out and not result or not recorded in the chart if that were to occur. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
The form of the question, I'll sustain the objection. You can ask it differently.
Sure. Dr. Fowler, with regard to the interferences that you were talking about, what, if any, impact would that have on the results being reported?
If there were the three major things that could interfere with the result, like high lipids, hemolysis, or high bilirubin, our machine would flag that, and we would have some information that a result may not be valid. And sometimes we will report a result with a disclaimer, or sometimes if those levels are so high, we won't report it at all. But in this case, there were no flags.
Nothing further on.
So what that means is that a lot of the times when a test gets contaminated, it just generates a result that is like insane. So as an example, the like when you do a roadside breath test, right? That roadside breath test where you breathe into the thing is expecting it's expecting that it's just getting what you'd call lung alcohol. Your lungs are one of the things that like purges alcohol over time. It's one of the ways you excrete alcohol. And so the breath, like the breathalyzer, calculates all of this out based on, you know, what your blood alcohol would be based on the amount that you are breathing. But you can throw that way off, right? You can throw that hugely off. So, you know, let's say I'm about to take a, let's say I'm about to take a breathalyzer, and I take my jug of vodka, and I take a sip. Cool. Wow. Okay. That'll wake you up in the morning. So, now that I've taken a sip off the jug of vodka, my mouth alcohol is elevated. And so, if I were to blow in a breathalyzer right this second, right this particular moment, I would blow I'd blow a result that would just be like, you know, hey, this guy is dead, right? This guy is a corpse. This guy is a corpse that has been soaked in booze. But really, I had a tiny sip, right? I had a little baby sip off that giant thing, and I haven't had any other booze today, right? So right now, if you gave me a breathalyzer, even though I am cold sober, dead steady, I would blow an insanely high amount, right? So if you got, and so there's various other things that can do this, right? Mouthwashes can contaminate it if you use a mouthwash like right away because the mouthwash contains alcohol. All of these things can cause all sorts of difficulties. So, yeah. All right.
Anything, Ms. Little, or are you all set?
If I can have one moment, Your Honor.
By the way, do not soak a corpse in booze. That is not a proper way to preserve a corpse.
Thank you.
Commonwealth call Mr. Nicholas Roberts to the stand. Your Honor, may we approach this while the witness...
Nicholas Roberts. And now they're doing a...
You saw us with the evidence given the court during the case now hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you. You can have a seat. I just need you to keep your voice up really loud.
All right. This is also an important witness because I was starting to wonder if the town of Canton was like entirely white people. So cool.
You're too soft. We have to turn off the air conditioning. Everyone's going to get mad. No problem.
All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We're at 125 now.
Would you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury, sir?
Sure, my name is Nicholas Roberts, Roberts.
He's wearing something or other scientific as a
What is
shirt.
it that you do for work, sir?
I'm currently employed with a company called Thermo Fisher as a field service engineer
And how long have you been doing that?
since November of last year.
And so prior to that, or prior to November of last year, 2023, where did you work before that?
I was in the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab in the toxicology unit.
And how long did you work in the toxicology unit at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
Since October of 2014.
All right, so this is our toxicologist. His job is going to be to read back those numbers to the time of the accident. This is going to be hotly contested because the prosecution is going to say, you know, assume that she was on a down scale for her alcohol. How drunk was she at the time of, you know, whatever incident? And this guy's going to say, so drunk, all the drunk. But that may not be correct. That's a big assumption.
Now, if I could turn your attention to prior to joining the lab for the Massachusetts State Police, can you talk a little bit about your educational background? Where did you go to school and what did you go to school for?
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree in applied forensic science with a concentration in chemistry and toxicology from Mercyhurst University. That's in Erie, Pennsylvania. And then I also have a master's degree in forensic toxicology from the University of Glasgow in Scotland.
Now, after receiving your
Cool,
degree from the
Glasgow.
University of Glasgow in Scotland, where did you go from there?
I returned home to the British Virgin Islands where I taught at a community college,
And what did you teach there?
mainly chemistry and a term or two of physics.
And then following your teaching in the Virgin Islands, where did you go from there?
I was hired then at a Mass State Police Crime Lab.
Now, when you're initially hired at the Mass State Police Crime Lab, you're working initially as a forensic scientist 1, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what your duties and responsibilities are, what your work looks like as a forensic scientist 1?
So a forensic scientist 1, you're essentially going through all the trainings that they provide at the lab. We do a number of different testing, mainly on blood and urine, looking.
This is also not this guy's first time testifying, I'm sure. And you can see the difference. This guy is confident in court. This guy's able to deliver. This guy's able to, you know, he's got some charisma. So, you know, this guy's a very different kind of presentation.
For the presence of drugs and alcohol. We also do serum conversions and retrogrades. So during your training period, I started as FS1, so that went up until I was fully signed off to actually write reports that would be issued to ADAs across the whole of Massachusetts, in which I became a forensic scientist 2.
And so what are the difference, sir, between sort of your work as a forensic scientist 1 versus your work as a forensic scientist 2?
We're going to take
So
this
essentially
down to
as a 2, you're essentially fully
a pretty
trained
fast
and you're
talker.
able to
So
do
now we're
all
at
the
1
testing that we
speed.
do in-house. You also are able to go and give testimony based on the reports that you write, whereas in a forensic scientist 1, you're still in that training process.
And did you work essentially as a forensic scientist 2 from that point in time till the time that you left the lab in November of 23?
Yes.
Now, with
Why'd you get
reference
fired?
to, while you were working at the lab, was there sort of an ongoing, continuing educational component?
Yeah, so we would habitually receive articles based on different discoveries within the forensic field. So different ways they would find certain types of drugs in different bodily fluids. It's always a revolving door when it comes to drugs being discovered as well as being manufactured, what's illicit on the street, et cetera, et cetera. We would often get different articles,
Also
just
true.
research papers.
He's just
based
not there
on,
anymore.
What they're doing to discover these things within the matrices that we are looking at.
Now, in addition to that, while you worked at the lab, what, if any, are you familiar with the term proficiency testing?
Yes.
And what, if any, proficiency testing would you undergo while you were at the lab?
So we receive both in-house and external proficiency tests. Essentially, the process would be just the same. The only difference would be we'd have
Yes, he
internal
is.
people sending us samples as if it came from an external source. And then the external proficiency testing that we receive is actually part of our accreditation. So it came in just like regular samples, and we would test it accordingly per our protocols.
And as far as the proficiency testing that you undertook over the course of your time at the lab, did you pass each of those tests?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned a little bit as far as accreditation with regard to the lab. What, if any, accreditation did the State Police Crime Lab have?
We had accreditation. It's a internationally accreditation
I've been to
board
Scotland
for
once. I
forensic,
enjoyed it, so
scientists,
maybe?
as well as any kind of lab in particular, and the branch that our lab would have fall under we have a certain set of rules that we have to adhere to. Mainly, it's a standard known as an ISO 17025, but we have a different accreditation board, and they have narrower requirements because of the type of lab that we are.
It may be pretty well understood, but that as far as the accreditation is concerned, that's done through an external entity, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with regard to the lab, as far as your assignment of work, at the time that you left the lab, about how many forensic scientists were working within the lab in your toxicology?
By the time that I left?
Yes.
So within the toxicology unit, there was one more when at the time that I left.
And as far as you and sort of the other forensic scientists too, at the time that you worked at the lab, was there some sort of rotation, or how were you assigned work as it related to your work in the toxicology?
So throughout my time there, we had more forensic scientists, ones and twos, and we would delegate each type of assignments that we would look for to different types of testing. On a monthly basis, we would get a different group of tests that we would perform throughout that month, and it would rotate to the next person as the month at the end of the month. So that's how we did the testing.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to May of 2022, you're working with the lab at that time, is that correct?
Yes,
And were you assigned to serum conversions at that particular time?
I was, yes.
And at some point, were you specifically assigned to a case involving a Ms. Karen Reed?
Yes.
Now,
Okay, now we're getting to the point. Cool.
as far as a serum conversion is concerned, if you could explain to the jury sort of what goes into that process and what is it that you're reviewing or you're looking at, how is a serum conversion, what is it, and how is it performed?
Sure. So with serum conversions, usually what happens is that we get
Oh my God, I'm
hospital
tired.
results. So that would be the police or the ADAs would get results from the hospitals that
We got 2
whoever
more hours
was
of this.
attended
I'm hoping that
to.
they will
we get the
pick it up.
results, and usually hospital alcohol results they use serum in order to test alcohol. Serum is essentially the liquid portion of blood. Let's say, for instance, you fall and you cut yourself, that red stuff that comes out, that has serum within it. What the hospital does, they centrifuge it or spin it very fast in order to get the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and all kinds of the heavier materials out of that blood. And what's left is a serum. So they use that to test their alcohol. What studies have shown is that we actually tend to have a higher alcohol concentration in serum than in blood. So what that means is that due to the chemical nature of alcohol, it likes to stay in that liquid portion more than throughout the whole blood. So a serum conversion essentially is able to convert the alcohol content from that serum that we get from the hospital into what it would be in whole blood.
And did you have occasion to perform a serum conversion in regard to Ms. Reed's medical records?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
So, okay, we did some math. Here's what it would have been for whole blood. This guy's a good
I'm
witness.
showing you a document just asking
Like,
you
he's
to
a
do that.
good,
Finished?
That's what he said. Just testing the serum gets you a higher number than it should be.
Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
So this is the serum conversion report that I made, with the calculations were made on May 3rd of 2022.
And as far as the result that you received, in addition, so what kind of materials did you receive in order to perform that analysis?
We got the medical records.
May I approach the witness again?
Yes.
My apologies, Your Honor. If I could, looking for the exhibits. So I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 106. directing your attention to this last page contained within this document here. Is that a portion of the medical records that you reviewed in regard to Ms. Reed's serum alcohol level?
Yes.
And if you could, what was reported in the medical records that you reviewed and using in your serum conversion analysis as far as the level?
The level was at 93 milligrams per deciliter.
And so, with regard to that 93 milligrams per deciliter, I'm sorry, was there also a time that that specimen was collected as far as your review of those records?
Yes.
And what was that time, sir?
It was at 9 in the morning, 9:08.
Now, as far as, just in terms of the general term, as far as forensic science, what you did at the lab, can you explain what that term means or what you did in relation to that?
What do you mean specifically?
That was very poorly phrased. Let me try to restate that a bit. What is your understanding of forensic science, and can you explain that?
Oh,
What is your understanding of forensic science? And can you explain that to the jury? You're going to ask him. Oh my God, we're going to explain an entire discipline. Why, God, why?
forensic science is essentially a scientific study based on anything dealing with the law. So whether it comes to ballistics or DNA analysis or toxicology, like I did, anything focused or based on the law or for legal purposes, essentially that's what forensic science kind of encapsulates.
And forensic toxicology, would that sort of be a subset of forensic science?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what your understanding based on your training and experience, what is forensic toxicology?
So toxicology in general is essentially just a study of poisons, plainly speaking. So anything
Including alcohol, by the way.
essentially that would be toxicology, because you also not only have forensic toxicology, but you also have like environmental. And the forensic toxicology is just, like I said, again, with the forensic science, it's just basing it on things for legal purposes.
Now, through your training experience, are you familiar with sort of the difference between a serum plasma level versus a whole blood level?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what your understanding is of each and what, if any, differences there are between the two?
So just plainly your serum plasma level, or the serum plasma is what it's called. It could be referred to as either or one or the other. So that is just the alcohol level in your serum, whereas your whole blood is your alcohol content or regular BAC in the whole blood. This difference between the two is, like I said previously, in your serum or plasma, that alcohol content would be higher as it would have been in the whole blood.
Now, as far as the milligrams per deciliter, how that's reported in the Good Samaritan medical records referencing Ms. Reed that you reviewed in this case, is that typical as far as how hospitals would report sort of the serum plasma levels?
Yeah, from my experience and all the times that I've seen serum conversions come to the lab, milligram per deciliters are the units that they use from the hospital, yeah.
Now, as far as that 93 milligrams per deciliter, what, if anything, with regard to serum conversion, what, if anything, are you then able to do to convert that to a BAC or a blood alcohol concentration?
So based on some studies, they came up with a few different conversion factors, knowing that the blood alcohol content would be higher than the serum plasma content. They're able to apply different conversion factors to the numbers that we would get in serum. And we usually get, excuse me, we usually give a low, an average, and a high, being that it's kind of hard to say what one particular person's conversion factor would be between the two of them, since it's dependent upon like age, sex, the water content, what you had to eat that day. So it's harder to pinpoint, therefore we give a good range as what it could possibly be pertaining just
So if you want to get more exact than this, what you need to do is you need to actually examine the person, right? You need to actually bring the person in and do all of this testing to get like their specific conversion factors. But This guy says we have a range of like what the human experience is, and so we're gonna give a range of where it could be to where it could be, right?
Just in case a person converts, or their conversion would be a lot lower or higher, so we give a good range.
And as far as those different conversion factors, where do those come from?
It's based on some studies. I don't remember the actual names of the papers that were thing, but they were based on studies throughout the forensic world when it comes to looking at specifically testing blood and serum to find that conversion factor.
And as far as those studies are concerned, do they come from sort of different population bases? Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's how they were able to get the range of conversion factors that they use.
Now, as far as the water within the serum, or sort of how that works with the centrifuge, what, if any, relationship does that have to the reading that you get or the conversion factors that you use?
So the water content, essentially, if the serum being the liquid portion of the blood, water is also liquid, it makes up some of that serum that you get from it. Therefore, your higher water content, more essentially the lower the concentration could be of that, or lower or higher, depending upon whether or not your water content in that sample is lower or higher.
So as far as those different conversion factors that you're using, this is essentially a mathematical calculation, is that right?
Yes.
And so the different conversion factors that you're using for the low, the average, and the high, what are those conversion factors?
So the low is a 1.18, with the average being a 1.14, and then the high being a 1.12.
So based on your analysis, as far as the medical records of what was reported to you, using those three conversion factors, what, if anything, did you come up with as far as the low and average and high for the 93 milligrams per deciliter?
So our values that were calculated for the low was a 0.078 gram percent. The high was a 0.083 gram percent, with the average being a 0.081.
Now, sir, with reference to the alcohol that's reported in the records, are you familiar with, are there different types of alcohol?
Yes.
And can you explain sort of what those types are and what the differences are, or where they come from?
Sure. So there are multiple different types of alcohol, mainly based on the number of carbons that are within that molecule. You start off with methanol, which is one carbon. Methanol you can find in like some rubbing alcohols. You can find them in many different labs. We have big, large vials of them. Ethanol, which has two carbons. That one is the common one that is in our alcoholic beverages, and it goes all the way up isopropanol, octanol, etc. It all depends on the number of carbons in the chain of it.
And the type that's reported within Ms. Reed's medical records, that was ethanol, correct?
Correct.
And so, with regard to your training experience as a forensic toxicologist, are you familiar with a term known as a central nervous system depressant?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what that term means and how it relates to alcohol?
Sure. So alcohol is what is classified as a central nervous system depressant, and essentially
It makes
the
your
name
brain
kinda
work less
gives
well.
it away as to what it does. Your central nervous system is responsible for essentially all your movements, both involuntary and voluntary. So the way you move your head, the way you blink, the way you breathe, the central nervous system is responsible for all of that. With a depressant introduced into the body, it affects that central nervous system, causing things to slow down. So that's essentially what depressant means. It's going to slow down certain processes that a central nervous system would be in charge of. So you can have delayed reaction times. It can cause drowsiness.
Ask another question.
How would that manifest as far as a central nervous depressant affecting the body?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it.
Go ahead.
This guy's a toxicologist. I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess.
Many different effects that you could see.
I feel like
or
I'm subject to a central nervous system
side
depressant right
effects
now.
from having a central nervous system depressant in the body, lethargy, sleepiness, drowsiness.
Oh man, I am. Yo. Yeah. How many of us are feeling lethargy, sleepiness, drowsiness?
Unable to walk properly, any kind of any one of those tests that you see on TV from the police when they try to get your horizontal gaze and they try to make sure you're coordinated, it can affect all those things.
So are you also familiar through your training and experience of working in forensic toxicology with a term known as retrograde extrapolation?
Yep.
And can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean?
So a retrograde extrapolation is essentially another calculation, but it allows you to be able to calculate what the possible blood alcohol content would have been at a time prior to when the blood was drawn. Say, for instance, blood was drawn at 2, you could essentially figure out what the blood alcohol content would have been at 10 in the morning prior to it.
Now, this requires a bunch of assumptions, right? This requires a whole lot of, because different people process alcohol at different rates. And in fact, the same person can process alcohol at different rates depending on other things. Like if you are running and doing a lot of physical exercise, then you're going to throw this off. If you're, if you're sleeping, it'll go differently. So, how much body fat you have, how much your natural metabolism is, all of these things. And so, but it also makes assumptions like, does it matter if you were, what if you were digesting alcohol? Your blood alcohol content would actually be going up, not down. So, yeah. There's a lot of speculative assumptions that'll...
Yes.
Now,
there's a lot of speculative assumptions that they will have to tease out on cross.
what are some of the types of information that you would need to know or that you would want to know in order to perform a retrograde extrapolation?
We'd need to know, one, for sure, what the alcohol content would have been. We also need to know the time that the blood was drawn, as well as the time of the last alcohol consumption.
Now, in regard to timing, as far as what, if any, limitations are there in regard to performing retrograde extrapolation as it pertains to timing is concerned?
So when we do these calculations, anything that's shorter than 2 hours, we usually don't do that conversion.
And why is that, sir?
Because we're built in within our calculations, we allow for 2 hours.
I'm
has to
close.
do with the way that alcohol leaves the body. If the alcohol is still being absorbed by the body, we want to give it enough time to get to a point where it's coming out of the body as opposed to increasing in the body. So that 2 hours puts the person at a point in which that alcohol be coming out as opposed to it being absorbed.
So there are essentially three different sort of phases as far as intake of the alcohol into the body through dissipation. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have usually there's a well-known.
And these calculations or these conversion factors are all based on sort of medical studies that you reviewed in literature that goes into your training?
Yeah, all of it was part of the training, and they came up with those numbers prior to even when I was hired there. But it is based on multiple different studies in that, looking at that elimination rate.
And so from your calculations when it came to the minimum...
The reason why it jumped is that it caught up and then it switched over to one-time speed.
What, if any, result did you come from with your calculations as it pertained to the minimum?
So the minimum amount that was calculated would have been a 0.135 gram %.
And that's essentially reporting in a blood alcohol concentration, is that correct?
Correct.
And then with regard to the maximum, what, if any, result did you get from your mathematical calculations in regard to that?
The result was a 0.292 gram percent.
And so that range that you received is a bit of a wide range. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And why is that, sir?
So we base those calculations. They're based on that conversion that I did from the hospital results from Serum, giving us a good range of values in the first place. But then we incorporate the retrograde extrapolation one, which uses a time factor, and that 2-hour difference using two different elimination rates that causes a wider span of values, and it's just so that it can encompass essentially anybody within the general population, that they would be somewhere in between that lower limit and that upper limit.
By the way, at like 0.292, we should be looking like that's getting into the range of like this person is either a serious alcoholic or they're a puddle, like, or you're talking about somebody who is getting close to death. She obviously wasn't 292, right? And the thing is that nobody indicated that they saw her staggering. Nobody indicated that they saw her slurring. Nobody indicated any of those things. And I'm going, you think you saw her at a 0.12? Even at the lower level, that should have been gross intoxication. That should have been levels of intoxication that where you would have noticed, like you would have seen even at the lower levels. This reading is just not right. Like his readback, something is wrong with his readback because it is completely inconsistent with the witness evidence.
So essentially, from those mathematical calculations, anyone within sort of the general population with that result would be somewhere between the 0.13 and the 0.29, correct?
Correct.
May I approach this to retrieve your arm?
Yes.
Yeah, the 0.29 has her at nearly dead. The 0.13 has her like staggering around, obviously slurring, like people would have noticed. It would have been really obvious if she was that kind of drunk at that, point.
I could have one moment, Sean?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay.
0.08.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Renee
You used
Spitley.
a
Thank you so
method
much.
called retrograde extrapolation to reach your sort of opinions and conclusions in this case, correct?
Yeah, it was a calculation.
And that means that you rely on an assumption that a trend will continue beyond sort of observable data.
So the metabolism is actually pretty well studied. So we know that that elimination rate, unless you introduce more alcohol into the system, it declines at that rate, and it's pretty linear.
Exactly. So in other words, certain assumptions are incredibly important for you to reach your analysis.
Sure.
And that includes sort of the timing of the very last drink that the individual had. Is that right?
Yes.
If your drinking pattern is sort of different than what you assume for purposes of your calculation, then you'd agree that your entire extrapolation would be incorrect. Is that right?
Yes, it could be.
So what he just admitted is that if he doesn't know when when her last drink was, then his calculations go out go into the garbage.
Again, those assumptions sort of included the time of the incident, right?
Yes.
And importantly, the time of the last drink.
So those two will be what we use. It's the time of the blood draw as well as the time of the incident or last drink.
And your report acknowledges that the testing that was used to obtain ethanol results in this case was not performed by the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab.
Correct.
And for that reason, the report and those results do not fall under your forensic lab accreditation standards.
Correct.
Good
The
question.
Massachusetts State Police, as you testified, is an accredited forensic lab.
Yes.
And so you're required to meet certain minimum standards in order to uphold that.
Yes.
And you'd agree that those accreditation standards are different from accreditation standards that, say, a hospital lab might have.
They can be.
Hospital lab isn't trying to
And-
do forensics.
Do you ever work on testing within the Massachusetts State Police Lab for serum tests or whole blood tests?
So we did test the blood and serum for alcohol content at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Yes.
And their typical protocols are to use whole blood tests.
We use whole blood or serum.
In terms of the machinery that's used with the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab, you'd agree that the gold standard is gas chromatography and mass spectrometry machines.
Usually with a headspace detector.
I'll let it, go ahead, you can
Sorry.
answer that.
Usually with a headspace detector, yes.
And that would detect whole blood rather than serum.
No, it just detects any volatile substance.
But you'd agree that a serum test usually, as you
Volatile
testified,
substance
has
includes
a much
alcohol.
higher level than whole blood.
Yeah, due to the nature of the substance itself.
And so you kind of have to go through this extra step of trying to extrapolate, okay, how do I convert this to get to whole blood?
So what we incorporated anytime we had a serum sample submitted to the lab for alcohol testing, we actually did the same serum conversion in order to figure out what the blood alcohol concentration would have been.
And that's an extra step that you have to take using conversion factors, correct?
Yep, that's a calculation.
You're not actually testing for ethanol in the blood, you're testing for NADH, and then you have to do a conversion to get it to what a whole blood test would just automatically show you.
Yeah, so we get the serum level and then we convert it via calculation.
And typically in the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab, you would do what's called confirmatory testing.
Yeah, so we have a screening method as well as a confirmatory test, correct?
And confirmatory testing means that you take two separate samples and you test both of those.
Essentially, well, our protocol involved testing in duplicate, but that's not always the case for the other drugs that we tested. We essentially have a screening test, which is one type of test, and then the confirmatory test would be a separate test, or sometimes even the same test, just we run the sample again.
And the reason you typically would do two tests is to ensure that there's no error in the testing.
Correct.
And that acts as a fail-safe against false positives. You agree
Yes.
with that? And it also ensures that you're
So a false positive test is a test that is like, it shouldn't be, saying something, but it does. Whereas a false negative is one where there's actually a thing there, but it comes back as a negative. So two kinds of error.
testing the correct sample.
Correct.
And in this case, obviously, you didn't conduct any of the testing.
Correct.
You're just assuming the accuracy of a single test that was performed by a hospital.
Action.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
And so if the clinical results are invalid, then your extrapolation is going to be invalid.
Yes.
Now, you discussed a lot about sort of serum testing and conversion rates. Do you recall that testimony?
Yeah.
And you'd agree that the precise conversion rate between serum ethanol levels and whole blood ethanol levels is almost impossible to accurately predict.
For each individual person, it would be difficult. Yes.
And that's because the amount of water in our blood is scientifically impossible to predict with accuracy.
I'm not aware of any kind of test that would do that. So, yeah.
So
Because individuals are different, right?
Yes.
this
And
guy's
so the conversions that you use
this guy's not trying to be deceptive, right? And he's not trying to play any silly games. I like that. So, yeah.
are based on averages from scientific studies.
Yes.
But you'd agree that in certain instances, people can fall outside of that average range.
Yeah.
In fact, a comparison of, hospital serum alcohol levels, they range quite wildly. You'd agree with that.
Yeah.
In fact, you're aware that some studies show that a conversion rate from serum alcohol to blood alcohol can be as high as 1.59%.
I wasn't aware of those numbers, but yeah, it could range. That's why we give a wide range, and you could lie on the outskirts of either side.
And so that would mean that the actual blood alcohol content, once it goes through the conversion rate, would be much, much lower than sort of the average conversion rate that you relied on.
Yeah, it could be both higher and lower.
And that includes that range that you gave, right?
Yeah, it could fall outside the range.
I like this guy. He's just being honest. He's just, he's not trying to defend anything. He's just like, these are the facts. This guy,
I agree that the more imprecise an
this guy's solid.
is, the less reliable it is.
This guy's straight up my favorite witness so far. He's just being honest. That's it. So little of that in this court. Like, he doesn't care what the outcome is. He's just like, here's the science.
You do have to base it on good. Your starting blocks have to be good. So you have to know the times in which the blood was drawn, the time of the incident, and essentially what your value was for your BAC.
Yep, straight shooter,
And the
no
time of the
chaser.
last drink, you'd want to know that?
So we would put that around the time. Yeah, either the time of the last drink or the incident date.
And so the more sort of unknowns you're trying to account for, you'd agree the less reliable your end result is going to be.
It could be, yes.
And you'd agree that sort of the range you gave in this case, which was 0.135 to 0.292, that's a very, very large disparity.
Yeah.
Almost a sort of 120% swing.
Yeah.
That would be the equivalent of, for example, predicting a child's going to grow somewhere from 6 feet to 14 feet.
Objection.
Sustain.
You hear the judge, she's laughing a little bit about that one, but she's like, yeah, okay.
It's a very large number. You'd agree with that.
Yeah, there's a large range, like I said, due to the factors involved in the calculation. That's how it gets
Some
so
leftover
large.
Ethiopian food.
And that's because you're acting with a lot of unknowns in this case.
Yes.
Now, you testified that your retrograde extrapolation assumes that Ms. Reed reached the elimination phase of processing alcohol at or before sort of 12:45 a.m.
Yeah, we allow for, we start for the maximum at the 12:45, and then it would have been 2:45 for the minimum.
And so for purposes of your calculation, if Ms. Reed drank alcohol after 12:45 a.m. and before her blood was drawn at 9:08 a.m., your entire calculation would be invalid.
Yeah.
That is the mic drop right there. That is well done. And we are at 10,000 people watching. Thank you guys all for joining me. Please hit the like button while you're here. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button. You will help the stream going. She has, and this guy is just straight up honest. He's like, yep, if she drank after my last expectation, then my calculations, my numbers are no good. Little did great on this cross, and it's partially because this guy is not trying to lie or trying to BS.
No further questions.
Hey, Mr. Lally.
Spray, please.
So in this instance, Mr. Roberts, you're dealing with a time of incident that was known, correct?
Yes, it was given to me that it was at 12:45.
And as far as the BAC or the serum conversion that was coming from a medical record, as far as, so that was known as well at 9 or 8 in the morning.
The time that the blood was drawn, yeah, that was known as well.
Now, as far as the question you were just asked, if the defendant drank alcohol after 12:45, does that include sort of shortly after 12:45, or how long after 12:45 would it take in order to affect your calculations or your retrograde extrapolation?
It's hard to say where that would have skewed it. It would have definitely caused a different time frame depending on how long after the incident or the reported last drink, if there was another drink in between there. It just shortened up the amount of time that would have been prior to the blood draw for sure.
What I'm asking is, would it have any significant impact, or would there be any difference if the last drink was, say, at 1 a.m. versus 5 a.m.?
So that'd be a 4-hour difference. So essentially that could, given the conversion rates, that would put the numbers very different. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, so the 5 a.m. would significantly impact your calculations, correct?
Lally's trying to say it's not such a big deal because of the time window that, as to when she starts going, doing the search, right? And none of the people saw her with like a hip flask in the car as they were looking around.
Yes.
At 1 a.m., would that significantly impact your calculation?
No.
Nothing.
Okay. You all set, Ms. Little?
If I could just ask one question. You said that you were given 12:45 as the time that you sort of based your analysis on. And
Yes.
to be clear, that was not something that was provided to you by my client, right?
No.
That was something that was provided to you from a police report.
Correct.
No further questions.
Okay. All right.
And the reason why is that nobody actually, at least from what I could tell, nobody knows the 12:45 time frame, right? That I don't know how they get to 12:45 at this stage.
Mr. Roberts, you are all set, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, please tell me there's no more witnesses because I am dying of exhaustion.
Okay, your next witness, Mr. Lally.
Ms. Little did a good
Yes, Your Honor,
job.
the Commonwealth to call Mr. Michael Trotter to the stand.
Trotter. Okay. Not Proctor. Trotter.
Case now in hearings for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Sir, what is your occupation? I'm a leprechaun. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Michael Trotta, Trotta.
And where do you live, sir?
Sharon, Mass.
How long have you lived in Sharon?
Long in Sharon since '82.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I am the superintendent of public works for the town of Canton.
He's wearing so
And
much
how long have
green.
you held that position as superintendent of public works?
Since 2003.
And did you work for the town of Canton prior to 2003?
No.
Now, with regard to being the superintendent of public works, can you describe to the jury sort of what are your duties and responsibilities when it comes to that work?
Typical management duties of staffing, controlling,
Hiding pots of gold.
directing, working on the budget, working on scheduling, long-term scheduling, 5 to 10 years, capital planning, overall operations, the day-to-day operations, what it takes to maintain a water system, a sewer system, the road system.
Now, with reference to, if I could turn your attention back to
This guy's not the medical examiner. This guy is going to tell us what the plow schedule is. That's what we're going to hear now. So before we heard from Mr. Plow, this guy is the plow king.
late January, early February of 2022. At some point in early February, were you contacted by a trooper in regard to a blizzard that had happened the week before?
Yes.
And do you recall who that trooper was or how they contacted you?
I believe it was Michael Porter, and I believe the contact was by phone.
Porter or Proctor?
Now, with reference to that trooper, is that someone that you knew or you had spoken to before in any way?
No.
And prior to that date, did you know a John O'Keefe or Karen Reed or anybody?
No.
And as far as anybody within an Albert family within the town of Canton, were you familiar with them? Did you know them at the time?
No.
Now,
It's like you don't know anybody
you were
here, right?
contacted in that early February of 2022 with regard to the blizzard the week before. What if anything, was the trooper asking you? What kind of information were they looking?
He wanted to know what the procedure was when we prepare and staff a snowstorm.
And if you could explain to the jury sort of what is the procedure, or what at that time, what was the procedure, and what was sort of the makeup of what Canton DPW would do with regard to a snowstorm?
Well, we have the town is divided up into, I believe, 29 plow routes, several main routes, and side routes. The routes are generally somewhere between 3 miles and 3.5 miles long. And we have 30, I think back then we had 39 pieces of our own and probably 30-something private plow trucks. We try very hard to have 2 trucks on a route, but we generally don't get enough. So if we try to have a town truck on a route with a private plow on a route. The private plow is procured through a bid process. They have to have a contract. They have to have insurance, liability insurance, and they have to show that they've paid their taxes to the state and that they have workers' comp. And they have a contract with the town. Then the operations manager is in charge of the on-site, boots on the ground, if you want to call it that. He'll assign the specific truck and the private contractor to a route. Generally, the day before, maybe 12, 18 hours before, the two of us talk. We try to schedule the overtime so that you're not going home at 3 o'clock and then you're getting woken up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to come back. We like to schedule it so when the guys go home, they know when they're going to come back. To the best of our ability, that's what we'll do. We'll tell the contractors when they are expected. And generally, if we're plowing, it starts with a sanding operation. So we would have a sanding fleet, which is maybe a dozen trucks. They'll come in early, and then the rest of the public works people come in at a scheduled time.
And so there'd be about, and correct me if I'm wrong, there'd be about 30 some odd trucks that were sort of DPW trucks?
A few more. I'm not sure.
Man, if you thought things were going to get more exciting, there's nothing more exciting than the scheduling of plows. Oof. I picked a day to run to do, like, I'm going to do a full day of streaming. And I'm going to not get a whole lot of sleep because that's just how my brain works sometimes. And now it's like, all right, let's hear the full gritty detail of how they figure out which plows are on which streets. Now, I mean, this guy is, I'm sure he's perfectly pleasant. I'm sure he's a very nice guy to hang out with. But holy crap, he is murdering me right now.
sure the exact number. It's probably 37 or 38 because that counts sidewalk plows too. So there may be, I think there's 3 sidewalk plows, so there's probably 34 or 35, we'll say, between medium-sized trucks and the big construction trucks.
That was sort of my next question. As far as the DPW trucks are concerned, do they vary in size, or what is sort of the range in size of the town truck?
They'll go from a pickup, 2-ton pickup, F-150 or F-250 Ford, if you're familiar with that, to a medium-duty 20,000 to 22,000 pound truck, up to a large construction truck, which is generally 26, 28,000 pounds.
Now,
The large truck is a 6-wheel truck.
and as far as the other trucks, the private ones, those would sort of be subcontracted out through the bidding process, is that correct?
Yes.
And would the range, as far as the size of those trucks, would that be similar or something different?
They are pickup trucks, usually lighter pickup trucks. There may be a couple of front-end loaders. There's probably, I don't think there's any big heavy-duty trucks, but they're probably pickups. There might be couple of Jeeps, pickups. Again, a medium-duty like an F-350 or F-450 pickup. Those are Fords, and loaders.
Oh my God.
Now,
Get us to the point.
with respect to questions or what you were asked about by the trooper, was there a specific sort of street or plow route that the trooper was inquiring about?
I believe he asked who was down, that's Fairview, or down in the Cedar Crest area, that's what we call it. I believe that's what he asked me.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a document. Just look at that, look up when you finish. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir.
And what do you recognize it to be?
This would be a plow plan for that day. It's a plow plan for the season, but it is particularly a plow plan for that storm of January 28th through January 29 of.
So we've just learned that there was a special plow plan for that day because, yeah.
2022.
Thank you. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to introduce in a minute the next exhibit.
Okay.
I have no objection.
Thank you. Exhibit number 9. Thank you.
Charlotte, when it comes to that form for you that's now been marked as Exhibit 109, I just have a couple questions for you in regard to what's listed there.
Okay.
With regard to the top of the page, there's a listing as far as 1/28/2022 Boulevard 11 p.m. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Now, what does that mean, sir?
That means that the first group of workforce, which would be the Sanders, were scheduled to come in at 11 o'clock that night.
Now, as far as the next entry going across the top of the page has 1/29/2022, is that correct?
Yes,
And as far as what's listed as W&S/BM/REC at 2 a.m., what does that mean?
W and S would be water and sewer, BM would be building maintenance, REC would be the rec, and they are scheduled, that would be the balance
this day
of
is a
Canton's
BM.
workforce. They were scheduled to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And that 2 a.m., would that be at the same sort of central location? of
Yes,
all-
they would all report to the Bolivar Street garage. I think that address is 150 Bolivar Street.
Now, as far as the next listing, it states contractors at 3 a.m., is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who is that referring to?
That would refer to all the private contractors that would be plowing that day. So again, it's staged.
And sort of the last sort of notation on the top of that.
Can we
it
speed 'em up?
indicates
I guess
out
we
at
can.
5 a.m., 1/30/2022, is that correct?
That would be when we completed and everybody went home.
Now, with reference to the Cedar Crest neighborhood or the area that would include Fairview Road, there's different route numbers that are assigned, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And which route number would include Fairview?
That would be Lower Cedar Crest, number 11.
And from that, that would include Lower Cedar Crest, Kings, Fairview, and Spring, correct?
Yes.
And as far as the vehicles and the vehicle types that were assigned to that route pursuant to this list, what types were they and who was assigned to?
Truck 30, which would be a town of Canton truck.
I'm at 1.5
That's a 43
now.
International. Brian Lockman would be the driver. The 43 International is a medium duty truck. The next up would be 7400 International. That would be the large construction truck. And there is an absolute, a by the yard 4x6, which is I believe that's a small 1-ton dump. That would have been the private contractor that was on the route with the city truck.
And so that truck 30, the 4300 International, is that a bigger truck or a smaller truck than the 1-ton?
Then please again? Then the 1-ton?
Yes.
It's a larger truck. It's like a 3 to 5 cubic yard truck.
Man.
And the large truck is like an 8 to 10 cubic yard dump. It's a dump truck.
This testimony could convince like a 6-year-old boy that trucks are not interesting anymore.
And as far as the height on that International, would that be, how much, would it be taller or shorter than say, a 1-ton dump?
If you want, I would estimate
Lolly, your case is a 1-ton dump. Move it along.
that if you're sitting in the driver's seat of a car, you're probably 2.5 feet. When you're sitting in the driver's seat of a 1-ton, you're somewhere around 3 feet. When you're sitting in the driver's seat of this 4300, you're probably somewhere around 4 to 4.5 feet. And when you're sitting in a big construction truck, you're another 8 to 10 inches, 5 feet plus.
Now, when you're driving, or when the plow drivers are plowing the roads, what, if any, sort of instructions are they given as far as how to first start plowing the roads when they first come upon, sort of dropping the plows and going?
If we're in a plowable situation, which is kind of hard to define, it's generally when we feel that traffic is impeded or may not be able to safely get up and down the street. So that's probably anywhere around 2 inches. They're instructed, and we're expecting a heavy snow. They're instructed to plow the middle of the road, keep the middle of the road open, and as they make their way through the route, they're supposed to push back a little bit. If they try to clean a whole lane and then come back and do the lane again, generally they end up being in trouble and they can't keep up if it's a heavy snow. So they're instructed to plow the middle of the road to keep the roads open as much as they can before they do their finished cleanup.
Can I have one moment, Sean?
Yes.
I get the feeling this guy does not approve of naming the plows. That would be too much fun. So I feel like we may not actually get that.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
All right, Mr. Yannetti.
Wait, that was it? Okay. Okay. Was it just to hurt the jury? That's what this is about?
Good afternoon, Mr. Potter.
I guess they knew that like Turtle Boy was in court today, and they're just like, "Screw you, Turtle Boy. We're gonna bore the out of you."
Sir, Michael Proctor called you on February 3rd of 2022. Does that sound right?
It may be, I'm not sure of the date.
It was within days of the big snowstorm, correct?
Yes.
You knew that he was investigating the death of John O'Keefe, which had occurred on January 29th, correct?
I did not know that.
Had you heard that there was a police officer who was found dead on the lawn of another police officer in Canton?
Well, I knew, yes, I knew.
It's fairly big news at the
Yes.
time, correct? And were you aware that that was why Michael Proctor was calling you, related to that investigation?
After he called and identified himself, he said that is why he was calling.
Of course. Now, you spoke with him over the phone only, correct?
Yes.
He never came down to the DPW to meet you in person, correct?
Not me, no.
And he never asked to interview any of your employees, correct?
We may have discussed who was on that route and who plowed, but I'm not sure at that time if he had told me he was going to go talk to anybody else.
Oh, so it's your
I feel like this guy is the opposite of hookers and blow. Like this guy walks into a room and some nice young woman goes to college and people give up. So yeah.
testimony that you may have told him the identity of the plow driver when you spoke with him on February 3rd over the phone.
I may have, but I am not positive.
You don't have a memory of him asking you who the plow driver was?
He asked, no, I don't have a memory of his exact questions.
But leaving aside the exact wording of his questions, it's fair to say you don't have a memory of him asking you who plowed Fairview Road on January 29th. Is that fair to say?
He asked me about, I believe he asked me about this plow list.
About the what? The plow list?
This plow list.
Right, but on the plow list, there's the name by the yard, correct?
Yes.
All right. There's also, to the left of that, an indication of the name of the plow driver, and it's just a first name and a last initial,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
It doesn't spell out the whole last name, does it?
No.
But you know the full last name, correct?
Yes.
You have a limited number of employees, right? It's not a 1,000-person company, right?
Yes.
All right. And you're well familiar that Brian L. is Brian Laughlin, right?
Yes.
As you sit here today,
I am very
do you have any
tired.
memory of whether the name Brian Laughlin was brought up during that phone call with Michael Proctor?
We're gonna make it to
I may have
4:30,
said
but
to him that's who BL was, but I did refer, I believe I referred him to the operations manager to double check who was on plowing that day.
Okay. You say you may have mentioned the name Brian L. or Brian Laughlin, but again, I'm just trying to drill down on what your memory is. Do you have a memory one way or the other as to whether the name Brian Laughlin came up in that conversation?
If you are asking me, do I remember 100%? No.
Okay. In any case,
I mean, this is the thing: is this is another guy who isn't expected to be in court, and I mean, his job is a lot of logistics, right? Logistics is fundamentally boring. It sounds like he's good at his job, but nobody wants to hear about like plow schedules. It's just, yeah.
Trooper Proctor.
Also, when I say that this guy is the opposite of hookers and blow, that's not an insult. It is not an insult to be wholesome. This guy is super wholesome. Like, this guy is super, like, there's nothing wrong with that. Please don't take that as an insult.
Michael Proctor never asked to speak with Brian Laughlin when he talked to you over the phone,
He
correct?
did not ask me, no.
I'm going to allow a question and answer.
And how short was that phone call with Michael Proctor?
If I tell you, you're going to ask me, how do I know for sure? I would
Okay.
say a few minutes, whatever a few minutes is.
I'm going to accept that answer. And you would agree with me that after,
A little bit of a sense of humor.
Yes.
After that couple of 3-minute phone conversation, you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor never followed up again with you personally.
That's a good question. I am not sure.
Okay. Well,
I feel like I see people saying, this guy is, the quintessential grandpa. This guy would be a great grandpa. I'm sure that his grandkids love this guy. I'm sure that they're always just thrilled to see him. I'm sure that he is, fantastic. It was not meant to hurt. This guy being the opposite of, it's not an insult. Really.
I'd like to direct your attention to about a week and a half later, specifically the date of February 14th of 2022, which maybe you don't remember the precise date, but around that time period, you came into work around that time period, and you learned that a defense investigator named Paul Mikowski had left his business card for you with somebody on the DPW staff, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Ask it differently.
Yes.
I do not,
Sir, that means you
Oh.
don't answer that question. I think he's going to ask one that's an appropriate one for you to answer.
This guy's so helpful that even after the question was objected to and the objection is sustained, he's like, I'm going to go ahead and answer. I like this guy.
Okay?
all right.
Do you recall when you came into work receiving a business card from Paul Mikowski?
No,
Do you recall calling Paul Mikowski back?
no,
Do you recall speaking to any investigator from the defense at any point within a couple of weeks after you spoke to Trooper Proctor?
no,
Do you deny telling Paul Mikowski to call Bill Walsh?
Objection.
Sustained.
Who is Bill Walsh?
Billy Walsh is the operations manager for the,
The highway
I kind of feel like when this guy's testimony is done, that he's gonna like reach into a pocket, pull out a handful of Werthers, and like offer one to everyone in the gallery. This guy is so sweet. And, you know, Yannetti is kind of giving him the gears a little bit, not like full on gears, but he's just like, he's just cheerful. He's just kind of like, okay, you know, this is what we're doing.
department supervisor?
yes,
Did the name Bill Walsh ever come up in your conversation with Michael Proctor back on February 3rd?
Objection.
Did that name come up when you first spoke with Trooper Proctor?
again, I believe I mentioned it, but I am not positive.
And is it fair to say that the Canton DPW has their own plowing and sanding trucks?
Yes,
Does one of them in particular have a nickname?
if they do, I don't know what they are.
Have you heard?
He's like, I'm too much of a, you know. He's like, I don't know what their nicknames are. Is it Plowy McPlowface? Because if it is Plowy McPlowface, I totally want to know. And Noel saying, Hookers and Blow is a reference to the Hookers and Blow Save Christmas in the EDB book reading series. Sorry, all of the snow and plowing references, and I went spicy. Fair. Fair. He's just like, I'm not cool enough to know the nicknames.
One of your trucks being called Frankenstein.
Objection.
Sustained.
You don't
Okay,
drive the
that's
truck,
fine.
correct?
No, I do not.
But nobody else
but Brian
in the jury
Laughlin does?
recognized it
Yes.
either yet.
And Brian Laughlin was driving the truck that plowed Fairview on January 29th of
Yes.
2022?
Objection.
I don't actually know why Frankenstein was objected to, given that we've already heard about Frankenstein the plow. So why was that objected to? I don't see it. Okay.
Yes. It'll stand. The answer will stand, Mr. Lowry.
I may just have a moment, please.
Like, Frankenstein as the nickname of the plow doesn't mean anything.
The witness or the sidebar?
The witness.
Yes.
Sorry.
I see people comparing this guy to Carl from Up. Maybe, but he's not the grumpy Carl. He's the cheerful Carl towards the end of the movie. Like, this guy doesn't seem to have a grumpy bone in his body. We'll have to see what's going on. Oh, yes, this stream is meant to hurt me. I get what you're saying. All of this is, yeah.
Do you have reading glasses as well? Or
Well, I have, yes, but
you're able to read the exhibit that you have in front of you?
yes.
Terrific. I'm handing you another document, sir, and I would ask if you would compare that document with the document you have in front of you and tell the jury if it's the same document or not.
That said, if I worked with this guy, I would totally leave him like a bunch of leprechaun toys just as gentle teasing. I would totally like leave little leprechaun figurines on his desk.
It appears to be,
Does it appear to be identical?
yes.
I will take the one back that does not have the exhibit sticker on it. Thank you, sir. And I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any follow-up, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor, but may I just retrieve the exhibit?
Yes. All right, Mr. Trotto, you are all set, sir. Thank you very much.
All right.
Come on, do it. You've got the opportunity to be the funniest witness. Get out the Werthers.
You have another witness here, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth call Mr. Louis Jutras to the stand.
What a sweet guy. Boring as hell, but
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. May take the stand.
All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you,
this guy looks a little bit like Bill Gates, but man, those are some glasses. Those are some epic glasses.
please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Louis Jutras, Jutras.
And where do you live, sir?
Stoughton, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Stoughton?
About 23 years.
And what is it that you do for work, sir?
I work for the town of Canton. I am the manager of the Information Systems Division of the Finance Department.
And
The
how
what?
long
What
have you
was-
been
I'm
doing
sorry,
that?
what was the last part?
Of the Finance Department.
Thank you.
And sir, how long have you held that position?
Almost 25 years.
Now, if you could explain to the jury, just as far as your job is concerned, what does that relate to, or what is it that you do as a director of informational service?
Sure. So my responsibilities are for the municipal departments and all the technology associated with that.
Okay,
And
so
does
this
that
guy's
include
also
everything
going to be
sort of from
fascinating.
Cell phones to GPS in town vehicles to security systems, things of that nature.
Yes.
Now, with reference to your department, how many people work in your department?
There's 3 of us in total, myself and 2 others.
So you essentially supervise the other 2 people as well?
Yes.
Now, at some point, if I could turn your attention to around the time of January 29th, 2022, some point after that, did someone from law enforcement or from a police department reach out to you in regard to security cameras or camera systems within the town of Canton?
Yes, I received a notification from the Lieutenant Gallagher that there was a motor vehicle incident in town, that the state police would be looking for some video footage.
And so
Okay.
you received an initial notification from Lieutenant Gallagher telling you that the state police will be reaching out looking for video.
Correct.
And at some point shortly after that, did you receive any sort of, did anybody from the state police reach out?
Yes. Trooper Dunn had reached out. We had a phone conversation, and we had email correspondence relative to dates and times. We had pulled some footage from one site in Pondside Farm that was put together. And then after that, there was a request for anything facing Washington Street, either from Town Hall or from the library.
And so as far as what was relayed to you by Trooper Dunn, what was sort of the description or what was it that you, were they
So,
asking just
video.
specific timeframes, or did you get any other information as far as what you were looking for?
From what I recall on it, there were 2 different timeframes, between 12 and 1, and then between 5 and 6. That was in our discussion and correspondence relative to Town Hall.
And just to be clear, that's from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. and then 5 a.m. to 6 a.m.?
Correct.
Now, as far as the Accreditation Farm, describe to the jury sort of what kind of location that is or what kind of town property it is and where it is in relation to the town.
Yes, so the physical area is off of Pleasant Street, which intersects with Washington Street, closest to Dedham Street and the police department. That's a large area, big white house, and we have cameras that, face the entrance, the street, and the surrounding building.
As far as the coverage from those cameras, have you had occasion on either this occasion or prior occasions or subsequent occasions to look at sort of the view that the camera gets from Pondside Farm?
Yes, yeah, we have a straight shot down from the building, down the entrance driveway, right to the street. The other cameras that are around there's a couple of doorbell type cameras that physically focus on specific sections, and then other ones cover the general grounds around the building and the backside.
All right, so can I interrupt for a minute, sir? Could you please spell the name of the farm?
Yep, Pequicide, P-E-Q-U-I-T-S-I-D-E.
Thank you.
And don't tell us about the backside again. Just move on from there.
Sir, Mr. Jutras, is it fair to say that the Pequot-side Farm cameras cover more of the property and less of the street out in front? Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, as far as that was the initial request was in regard to Pequot-side, is that correct?
If they talk,
And so the subsequent request, what was that?
if they talk too much about the backside, people's phones are going to start going off. They're going to start dialing.
That was for anything town hall or library that physically faced Washington Street.
And so the town hall and the library, sort of where are they situated in relation to each other and in relation to Washington Street?
Yep, so they physically abut on either side of Washington Street, right at the intersection of Sherman. They are diagonal to each other.
Now, as far as the recording devices or the cameras on town buildings within the town of Canton, are they sort of uniform or does it vary from location to location or vary within the location?
The physical model of the recorder, as far as the manufacturer, that is the same that we have across 15 different sites. The types of cameras do change, interior, exterior, doorbell, things like that. But all of the actual recording units are of the same manufacturer, just different sizes and models.
And as far as the town hall and the public library cameras, as far as the exterior cameras at least, they face in that area of Washington Street and actually capture portions of Washington Street?
Yes, yep.
This guy also likes to
Now, as far as the
sort of
cameras
suck on
are
his
concerned,
teeth there.
particularly the exterior cameras that we're talking about as far as the library and the town hall, how are they sort of set up to record? Is it one continuous recording? Are they motion activated? How are they set up?
Yes, the cameras, based on size and so on, they are all set up for motion in pretty much all of our locations.
And as far as from your review of those cameras, is there any sort of indication on the footage as far as date and timestamp or anything like that?
Yes, we usually have it in one of the corners or someplace along when we have the video saved off and exported.
And when you were able to pull the video that the troopers were requesting, the date and timestamp affixed to those videos, was that accurate as to what the date and timestamp actually was at the time that it's recording?
Yes, I would believe so.
And sort of those date and timestamps, you know where they come from? Right.
The system is linked to
Okay, we're gonna hear the
time
exciting
server,
thing of
which is
timestamps.
remote and is used from the national standards.
Now, as far as the video is concerned from those, they're motion activated, but how far back do they go as far as how many days pass before, does it get sort of overwritten at some point?
Yes, depending on the site, most of them, because of the motion activated, because of, various request types and so on, and the number of the cameras, we usually try to get about 30 days. There are some that go longer because the site is or isn't used as much. And then there are other ones where, specifically with the library, they only requested to have a maximum of 30 days on that device.
And so when you received this request from the troopers, that was well within the 30 days, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, because we're talking February 7th for the last request.
Now, as far as the video that you exported, well, let me ask you this. As far as when you were asked to retrieve that video, can you explain sort of mechanically the process of how you got that video and how you delivered that to the trooper?
Yeah, so specifically for the town and the library one, that again, time frame provided, using the manufacturer's software product, doing the search, picking the cameras that are facing the Washington Street side, and then having the time frame and exporting that out. That becomes the size of it, either a full executable that can just be opened and viewed, or a combination of files that has a player with it. And then based on the fact that we had already put videos together and that material was picked up, I had sent a file share link for that information.
You had sent that file share link to Trooper Dunn, is that correct?
Correct.
This is such
As
a
far as
long
the video that you
explanation of
reviewed, were you
I
sort of parsing,
retrieved
or were you
video
looking for
from
specific
the system.
areas, or did you just sort of take the whole time period requested and send that off to the trooper?
As far as I recall, it was the whole time frame, just because we only have 2 cameras or so that physically cover the area in question, and he had 2 separate hours in question as
I
well.
just hate when it's boring.
So they were
And
able
this guy
to
is
be
boring.
exported and sent.
Don't have enough
Now,
sleep.
as far as this particular video, this is video only, correct? There's no audio that's attached to these cameras?
Correct, no audio.
Now, as far as access to these cameras and the footage within the cameras, who, if anyone besides yourself, would have access to remove any sort of footage from the cameras?
No one.
So nobody could have messed with the cameras. Cool.
We get to the camera footage specifically. I just want to ask you about another area. In relation to, also within sort of the ambit of your duties and responsibilities would include GPS on town trucks, correct?
Yes, Public Works has a setup via their radios for GPS information.
And so with regard to that, specifically the DBW trucks, what, if any, information did you receive from anyone at the DBW in relation to those GPS devices within the trucks shortly after the snowstorm from the 28th and the 29th of January?
Yep. So on February 1st, I received notification from the operations manager that the GPS information was not working.
And so you received information after the snowstorm that it wasn't working during the snowstorm, is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as that, as far as GPS sort of going down in the DPW trucks, is that abnormal, or how often would that occur?
Yes, it happens several times throughout the year for various reasons.
So our trucks are crappy. The reason why we have no GPS is because everything, like, there's just so many coincidences in this file that I'm just like, this is getting hard to believe, right? Everybody's replacing their phones. The GPS goes down. The like, okay.
They have a radio repeater. It's connected through a network. It runs software on a server that we have in-house. Server's rebooted, network goes down, things that, change for...
Canton is the worst town for technology or memory. I just don't understand it. And Jen Meyer, I'm coming to CrimeCon in Nashville, so I will see you there. So, yep.
Various reasons, and we need to reestablish connection to whatever recorder it is for that repeater, and then the information is then picked up.
Now, taking you back to the Canton Public Library video that you provided to the trooper, were you told anything about sort of any type of vehicle or anything to be looking for within that particular video time frame that they were asking about?
Not that I recall.
Did you recall ever actually watching the video yourself as far as confirming sort of what it was?
Yes, I mean, I watched it from the time frame to see that we had information, watched it just to move forward to the end to make sure there was information, and when the recording, was physically available. But what was in it, no.
May I approach?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you a disc. Just ask you to, as far as that video from the Canton Public Library, you've seen that video subsequently, is that correct?
This disc with the wording on it?
Yes.
No, I have not seen this.
Not that specific disc, I'm sorry, sir, but the footage, have you been shown that particular?
How would he know what footage is on it? You just handed him a CD. It could literally be anything from, like, that could be anything from the CCTV footage to, like, Debbie Does Dallas number 72. Do you think he's able, like, what do you expect him to do? Just, like, slot that into his jaw and read it? Like,
Video footage, or did you review that footage before you gave it to the troopers?
This is not mine to the trooper.
Understood. May we approach?
Okay.
he's like, I don't recognize this CD. He's like, well, it's a copy. It's like, okay, cool. Like, if it was a specific copy he made with, like, his signature on it, then maybe he could recognize it. But how's he supposed to just eyeball it? Like, do you think this guy's able to just, like, hold a DVD up to the light and be like, oh yeah, I know what's on this? Like, that is not a talent people have. That is not a, that's not an ability. That, like, so, like, that is not how humans work.
I just asked to briefly, publish portions from those.
Hold on. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yes. Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have the first video portion from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. Mr. Jutras, from what's up on the screen, you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, I do.
And as far as the view from this camera, this is from the library, is that correct?
Correct.
And so as far as what we're looking at here, this is the view from the camera as you observed it on the security camera and as you provided it to the trooper, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, sir, do you have is there a laser pointer up on the desk in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with this area as far as the area of Canton?
Yes, yes. Town Hall is right across the street.
And I'm sorry, I stepped right over your word.
Is this Canton or Whoville? Because all of this looks like way too kind of pastoral.
When you were saying that.
Yeah, so Town Hall is right across the street, and the intersection here is at Sherman, and this is Washington, the longest street that you'll see.
So Washington sort of runs parallel with the street, and then Sherman is the street that appears to intersect with Washington.
Correct.
In the area of the town hall.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Cummings, if you could take that down and just put up the 5 to 6. Again, sir, what's up on the screen? Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Is this essentially the video that you provided to the troopers or retrieved from the Canton Town Library from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. later on that day, January 20th?
Yes, sir.
And the orientation as far as Washington Street, Sherman Street, that's all the same in reference to the earlier. The camera hasn't moved.
Correct.
Thank you. You can take it.
Wait, okay, is he gonna publish the full video, or was the entire point just to show us a road? Fascinating, the road.
Yes.
By the way, I'm just going to commend Lally on, you look how clean that desktop is. That's a court computer. That is sensible. He doesn't have any BS. There's nothing to... good for him.
Thank you very much, sir. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I may proceed, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Now, is this... like, that snow couldn't hide a body. That snow couldn't hide a dog poop.
Good afternoon, Attorney.
So confirming
Good
the,
afternoon, attorney.
State police, when they contacted you,
Or did he say Mr.
asked
Yannetti?
for 2 hours of video footage, right? Between 12 and 1 a.m. on January 29th and between 5 and 6 a.m. on January 29th, correct?
Yes, sir.
You pulled that video footage, or at least arranged for it to be pulled for the state police, correct?
Yes.
And I believe your testimony was that you checked the beginning time and the ending time to make sure that you had the right time periods for those 2 hours, correct?
Yes.
But you did not sit down and watch 1 hour of snow falling and or cars driving by the public library, correct?
That is correct.
Did
I
you do
did
that
not.
for
I was halfway expecting this guy to be like, yes, I did. It was fascinating. I watched the snow falling. By the way, as a lawyer, sometimes you will have to, sometimes you'll have to watch stuff like snow falling. Once upon a time, I had a file where my client was alleged to have been in a particular area. And the prosecution disclosed to me an 8-hour video of a camera that just showed a sidewalk. I had to watch that 8-hour video looking to see if my client walked through it. And I had to watch it twice because that 8-hour video, yeah, and I couldn't speed it up super fast because there were people walking in and out, and I needed to sit there and be like, okay, is this person my client? At the end of it, I concluded that my client did not appear at all in that video, and it sucked. I spent 16 hours on that freaking video, and my client wasn't in it at all.
between 12 and 1 or between 5 and 6?
Correct. I did not.
And at the time that you provided the video footage to the state police, did you know whether or not there was any missing footage within those 2 hours?
No. Because again, I did not play every single second of the video.
Understood. It's fair to say, and you're certain, that you did not cut out any of the video footage in those 2 time periods, correct?
Correct. It's motion activated. That's the only piece.
You provided the state police with the raw footage as it existed in your possession at that time, correct?
Yes.
And at that time, you knew that the raw footage was only saved for between 30 and 60 days?
That one is less than 30, yes.
Right. Now, as of early February, when you were dealing with the state police, you knew that Karen Reed had been arrested and charged in court, correct?
I do not recall if I had that information.
You knew that there had been a police officer found dead on the lawn of another police officer in Canton?
At that time in February, I believe so.
And that likely would have been discussed when the state police called you?
I do not recall the conversation other than asking for video footage for Washington Street.
And
I think this guy's being honest. He's got this weird, like, smug, like the plow conductor guy, like the plow logistics guy was super sweet. This guy is honest, but he just feels punchable. I mean, don't punch him, don't. But it just.
Sorry, sir. If you could just keep
He's
your. If I
off-putting.
can't hear you, I guarantee you that these last jurors can't hear you. Could you repeat that last question?
Yep. Again, when in the conversation with it, we had the dates and the timeframes, and anything else relative to it, I do not recall specifically with conversation.
Okay. So you don't have a memory of why you were being asked for this?
Correct. I know it was for a motor vehicle accident. Who and what, I do not recall if that was ever mentioned specifically.
Okay. You would agree with me that as the IT director, you have the ability, if you wanted to download the footage onto some hard drive to preserve it, if you wanted to do that?
Yes.
Did any state trooper ever ask you to download and preserve that footage so that it would exist longer than that 30 to 60 day period?
No.
And so it's fair to say you did not do that, correct?
Correct.
You complied with what they asked you to do.
Yes.
Now, skipping ahead to April 6th of 2023, you were contacted by Michael Proctor, a state trooper investigating this matter, correct?
I do not recall.
Do you recall Michael Proctor asking you to provide to the defense in this case the same raw footage you had previously provided to the state police?
No.
And you don't recall telling him that you couldn't do that because after 30 to 60 days, the footage is gone, correct?
I had a phone call with what I thought was Trooper Dunn asking for another copy of the data and telling him that I did not have it and I couldn't recreate it.
I see. Oh, so you assume
If it was Proctor, but no, I thought I was speaking with Trooper Dunn.
Trooper Dunn was the name that you remembered from February.
Correct. That was the first interaction I had.
And
Yes.
when they mentioned state police, you assumed it was the same state police trooper, correct?
Yes.
It's fair to say that once you shared the footage with the state police in February of 2022, you didn't control what they did with it after that, correct?
Correct.
And you have no personal knowledge about how they preserved it or didn't preserve it, correct?
I'll allow it. Do you have any idea?
No.
So basically, Yannetti is saying, you gave them the footage. They could have done anything with the footage. They could have edited it. They could have thrown it out. They could have anything. I actually think at this point, this is a place where him not recognizing that DVD becomes a strength. It's like, why isn't it the same DVD? Interesting. We owe Runkle unlimited drinks at CrimeCon for live streaming today. I won't say no to a drink.
And one last question. You cannot testify about whether any video was removed from the footage after you provided it, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Jury heard it, though. That was a question for the jury.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Hey, can you follow up?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you are all set.
Thank you.
I am so happy to be done with his smug face.
You have another witness.
I do not, Your Honor, no.
Oh,
May we
thank
approach
God.
Just on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lolly. I am so done with today. So done with today. So, yeah. Oh my God.
So
You are
George,
unmuted.
in fairness, I didn't tell the lawyers that I was hoping to go until 4:30 today. And I understand, as sometimes happens with law enforcement witnesses, they get called away. So that's it for today. Now, next week, I would like to go as much.
It sounds like they had a cop. The cop was like ready to go. The cop said, "Hey, I gotta go." And Lolly said, "Go ahead." And then later found out that, oh, whoops. You know, we're going till 4:30. So yeah.
Much as we possibly can on the days that we're here for full days. So Monday is a full day. I would like to go until 4:30 if everybody can, with the shortened lunch hour. Tuesday, we're not in session. Wednesday is a full day again. We'll go right till 4:30 with the shortened lunch. Thursday is a half day, maybe even closer to 12, and Friday we will not be in session. So those are dates that we gave you before. So we will.
What did they say was Tuesday? I'm gonna go back.
4:30 if everybody can, with the shortened lunch hour. Tuesday, we're not in session.
Okay.
Wednesday is a full day again. We'll go right till 4:30 with the shortened lunch. Thursday is a half day, maybe even closer to 12, and Friday we will not be in session. So
Okay.
those are dates that we gave you before. So
Good stuff.
we will get as much done as we possibly can during that period of time. Okay, so those same cautions. Please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it. We've got a few days off. Just disregard this case. Don't think about it. Leave everything here and have a great few days. We'll see you next month.
All rise for the code, please. Karen, follow me, please.
I don't know why I can't add a redirect.
All right, and for scheduling, I will actually see you over here for scheduling.
Okay, so they've got some scheduling stuff to talk about. While they're doing that, we're going to go through some super chats. Christina says, you didn't sleep. I couldn't. They had a short lunch, so I was unable. Rainman YYC, did you butt link to the old stream? Rainman YYC, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. EE, Runkle, congrats on the 270K subscribers. Thank you so much. That's a kind of a nice thing before I go away to CrimeCon there. Lane J, check membership workshop stream for the redirect. I don't know how to fix some of this. Heinrichy, oh, thank you for the gifted membership. I probably mispronounced that. Sorry. Yellow Pill NP, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Let's move my face. Debbie W, anatomy is the what of the body, physiology is the how, and pathology is the what and how go wrong. Simple terms. That's a great explanation. I love that, Debbie W, so thank you. And Janaski says, Runkle, were you able to nap? I was not. We got like 20 minutes to change over, so that was not an effective nap. Grace, the court reporter has been a rock star. Poor doc prosecutor asked terrible questions. The court reporter is actually pretty amazing. Beach Rando, what is the median average of Canton's blood alcohol level on a Saturday night? 0.4. Bad Dragonite, hey Runkle, hope you and Chad have a great day. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if that's a reference. Mama Rebel, she could have also drunk back home. She absolutely could have. Like, she could have gone home and had some wine. Like, super... Yeah. Missy Katina, thank you so much for the YouTube membership. Like, if she thought she dropped John off at a party and that John was off partying, there's no reason she couldn't have had a couple of sips herself, right? Maybe some of those, Smirnoff screwdrivers. Bruce West, everybody else was drinking. Why not her? Exactly. Jamie F., thank you for the super sticker. Much appreciated. Jack Eaton, thank you so much for the super sticker. Much appreciated. And Bill Feinstein, eat leftovers or something quick and go to bed right after the end of court. That is the plan. Mrs. Runkle can care for puppers. The puppers will be fine. Mrs. Runkle and I'm going to get a nap. And then once I get the nap, I'm going to, Mrs. Runkle and I are going to go and watch a movie. So that's going to be the game plan. Somebody says, what is with court having maybe 2 days a week only? I suspect they've got other things going on in this courtroom that are occupying the space there. So that's what I think is what the issue is. Lori Lenny, like and sub to help Runkle. Let's get him to 300,000. Thank you so much. Family Tech, you need Canton Brainworm merch. I'd buy a shirt or a sticker for sure. I'm going to work on that. Lori Lenny, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Much appreciated. Ken Weber, it's sad that all of this will be a huge waste of time. As soon as the federal accident reconstruction is introduced, all of this will be irrelevant. Quite possibly. Yep. Elizabeth Calder, I'm a clinical laboratory scientist. An alcohol holder is always collected in plain red top tubes without additives, not green top with heparin. Interesting. Maybe they screwed up the alcohol collection. Chesney Meagle, is this a linear extrapolation? I don't know if it was actually linear or not. Need a mega pint? Maybe I missed it, but what if she had a drink when she went back to his place? Then their expert says that would screw things up. That would mess up our testing. Amelia LT, I am bored. I wonder how that breathing device of court reporter works. Is she repeating everything everyone says? Yes, that's what she's doing. She's talking into it and it's recording. By the way, greetings from Lithuania. Cool. I've never been to Lithuania, but I would love to see it. It's TJ Talk. This is exactly why I couldn't convict. Prosecution couldn't prove time of last drink. That was referring to a jury trial that they did, which is cool. Linda Rivard, I like him as a witness, respectful to both sides. There were a few of those today. Ann Bell Feinstein, my mom was a functional alcoholic. Her walking around blood alcohol was 0.07 first thing in the AM. You'd never know she was drunk until she'd had 4+ drinks. Prescribed 2 shots a day to keep withdrawals away. Yeah, I mean, if you are that level of alcoholic, it can be seriously dangerous to stop drinking right away. So you'll get people with prescriptions for booze. Elizabeth Calder, in rare patients, their own body makes alcohol without consuming alcohol. Has Karen been tested if she has this condition? I don't know if she's been tested for brewery syndrome. That would be interesting. Brewery syndrome is literally that. Your body makes booze and you can have a tremendously high blood alcohol being cold sober because your body's used to it. So Marvin CZ, I think having him explain what a false positive is would be good for the defense. I usually try to get experts to explain false positive, false negatives. So, yeah. Equality, there should be 10,000 likes. Like. So thank you so much, Equality. Ronnie Sherrard, so the Commonwealth still needs to call the plow driver, the troopers, and the gardener. Did I miss anyone? The butler, Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum. Willing to grow, thank you so much for the YouTube membership. Much appreciated. Alyssa, what if any snow would a snowplow plow if a snowplow could plow snow? Thank you so much. Lori Lenny, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Greg, your first day was nothing but grand slams. The trial had to do something to you to balance it out. It is true. They can't all be winners. Shauna Everett, thank you for the YouTube membership. Much appreciated. Mibby for the Dream Fund, thank you. Joanne Byer, thank you so much for the super sticker. Much appreciated. Mama Betts for staying awake to talk about plows in May. Thank you. And Belle Feinstein, EDB can catch us up tomorrow. Get some sleep. Thank you. MJ for the suffering. Thank you so much. The world wonders. He may be boring, but he's better at scheduling a plow than Brian Higgins was. Oh. Ouch. Little Irish girl. This guy was evasive like this to Turtle Boy. Yeah, the whole Turtle Boy thing is interesting. Scott Rauch, I mean, they took 3 weeks to prove the group went to the waterfall. It snowed, and the cops don't know how to collect evidence. What did you expect from today? Fair. DSN, thank you so much for the 5 gifted memberships. All right, we're gonna...
We are underway in the trial of Doomsday
Okay, that was obnoxious. That redirect sucked. Hopefully I don't get taken down. We'll see if I get taken down. That was miserable. And I'm not watching Chad Daybell, so we're just not going there. But man, that blew out my earballs. Sorry about that, folks. Greg, hey, look, it's Brian Higgins' next boss, referring to the snowplow guy. Equality, just wanted to thank your lovely moderators. They are indeed lovely, so thank you so much. Sherry, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, much appreciated. Franny Fruit, he looks like Martin Scorsese. I guess a little bit, yeah. Adam Addison, I can see it. Welcome aboard, thank you for the membership. Annabelle Feinstein, Werther's Candy is this pot of gold. That is kind of heartwarming. Fiendish Goth, love the username. Speculation / hear me out. If Frankenstein was a faulty mishmash plow, wonder if there's an insinuation that one of the plows hit John instead of Karen. I mean, it's possible. At this stage, anything is possible. Gree64, thank you so much for the YouTube membership. Much appreciated. Jen Meyer, is it true you'll be at our meetup with EDB Nashville? Yep, see you there. Tracy Fagan, I call BS. What if he is on vacation or drops dead? Let's hope that doesn't happen. Elizabeth Calder, Native Americans don't make alcohol dehydrogenase that breaks down alcohol. Thus, inaccurate extrapolation. Interesting. That's an interesting genetic quirk. If that's the case, I got to look into that. That's cool. Casey Cat, they should have tried butt dialing the GPS. Butt dialing was working for everyone else that night. Cat in Virginia, I was trying to figure out why Higgins doesn't have trash service. Is he just too cheap to pay for it? Possibly. Or possibly it's just an area that doesn't have it and they're expected to just make dump trips. So, Tracy Fagan, how did a copy get in? No signature required. There's some interesting stuff there. Aaron, Werther's for all. Thank you so much. Molly Biddy says, Runkle of the Bailey, I'm behind time, but please don't insult all your Irish viewers by implying all of our leprechauns are so short. Ha! Greetings from Kilkenny. Greetings. I was like, oh crap, where's this going? Paige Price, if I ever win the lottery, you will get a chunk. I appreciate it, but I mean, not necessary, but so Fiona W, for the pro bono goal, thanks for covering this, but please get some sleep. That is the plan. I'm going to get a nap in and then date night. Jill J, thank you for the YouTube membership. And then finishing to pack. I haven't finished packing. Allison, thank you so much for the super sticker. Much appreciated. Against the Tide, please like to help Ian with his pro bono goals. Much appreciated. Casey Cat, the amount of half days and days off. No wonder this was set to be a 6 to 8 week trial. The way we're going, we'll live here till Christmas. Possibly. I want to cover Baldwin too. So yeah, all the happy squirrels. Thanks for being here, Uncle Runkle. Nap well. Thank you so much. Darkling, I listen. You had me at Cradle of Filth yesterday. Subbed. I mean, I may have showed my cards a little bit as to, so yeah. Equality. Runkle, finally watched My Cousin Vinny with my husband last night. It was awesome. It's one of my favorite movies. Seriously. Elizabeth Webster, is it possible they got sight of her hitting him? If they had that on video, I would expect that this would not have been a trial. So, yeah. What did I miss? Why hasn't Runkle slept? I just have trouble sleeping, so I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. All right, so I've got to check my flights because we have trial again on Monday. So, I need to see my airline tickets there. So give me a second. Let's see. When am I coming back? When am I I'm just not sure if I'm on a flight Sunday or if I'm on a flight Monday. What day is that? So let's see. My itinerary. When am I flying back? Sunday. I arrive. Guys, I will let you decide how much you want me to suffer. Monday, I'm arriving. I get into the airport at 12:30 at night. 12:30 at night, I get in at the airport. I see in the U.S. putting trash on a curb makes it searchable. Was taking it to the base a way of making it not subject to search? I think that the search dumpster or the base dumpsters would also be subject to search. Nightcat says passport packed. It is. So I get in Sunday or Monday morning at 12:30, which means that I will from there have to take a cab or an Uber to get home, which gets me home at around 1:30. That 1:30 gets me a few hours of sleep before Monday. So I will probably stream Monday. It'll be it might be a little rough. So yeah. People are asking, is my passport packed? My passport is in fact packed. So all of that is good. I should be good to go. Please don't make me any more nervous about the flying because it is that. Patty R says sleep well. I will try my best. So, all right, I'm gonna call it here. I see you guys throwing super chats at me to keep me from getting a nap. So I'm gonna call it here. I'm gonna see you guys. Maybe I'll be able to do something. There's a video I just posted on the Baldwin thing, so if you want to check that out, I wanted to try to send that or send you guys there. I can't figure out how to do it. For some reason, it's just not being cooperative on the redirects. So I'm trying to send a. I'm just not being able to do it. So you guys will have to manually do the redirect. But please go check that out, and I will see you guys. See you guys later, and good night.